If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon, link is in the description.
Chapter 26, Witty Pranks. Hey, Kenzo. Will you keep making those kinds of jokes and expect me not to charge you for this in the future? When Tuka heard Kenzo's words, she immediately got angry, like any jealous girlfriend would. The girl who was Tuka's friend also blushed and didn't move from where she stood, not daring to intervene in this couple's argument. Didn't you ask me to help her? Now I'm being considerate of her problem, isn't that what you wanted? Kenzo smiled slightly as he defended himself against Tuka's irrational accusations. You. Upon hearing this, Tuka didn't know what to say. Although she knew Kenzo was joking and shouldn't take those pranks seriously, her anger was still greater than her reasoning. Do you expect me to give her all this money for nothing? Kenzo asked Tuka this while giving her a calm look. Then. I'll kiss you instead. Tuka thought of a quick response and said the first thing that came to her mind firmly. But we kissed a while ago. Kenzo couldn't finish his words because Tuka covered his mouth with her hand and handed the handful of bills to the girl who was standing in silence. Take this money and go rest. We'll see each other later at school. Kenzo, who became a bit more serious, said, if you really have problems at the hospital, you can go and explore the options available at Black Moon Hospital. In the end, Tuka knew that Kenzo's intentions were to help her friend without any conditions, but those witty pranks would be paid back when she had the chance. Watching Kenzo walk away, seemingly unfazed by this matter, Tuka said, come back quickly. It's better not to go out at night in the future, sometimes it's dangerous even in the 20th ward. Thank you, Tuka. The girl bowed her head and thanked her with tears in her eyes. Tuka said this because she was very afraid for the girl's safety. After all, the 20th ward was on the surface a safe area, but there were ghouls that went unnoticed by the Three-Eyed Crow's security network, and there were victims even if that ghoul was hunted shortly after. After saying that, Tuka didn't say anything else, and after giving her advice, she trotted to catch up with Kenzo in the distance. On the way back to the cafe, Tuka looked at Kenzo, who had a cold expression most of the time. I didn't bring any money, which is why I asked you to help her. When we get back, I'll pay you back the money you just gave away. Tuka didn't want to seem like one of those girls she had seen in school. Money is not the issue. I even gave you my credit card. In life, you must understand that you can't always help everyone. I learned that when I wanted to save those who didn't want to be saved. Do you understand me? I understand. Although Tuka gave this response, she still thought that Kenzo was upset about giving his money to someone he didn't know. Really, there's no need for you to pay me back. That small amount means nothing to me. But well, I think it's better to help people and be as you are than to act indifferent. Kenzo smiled slightly but still preferred to maintain his appearance as it was outside the house. Tuka finally nodded, not speaking. She still found it difficult to understand some things about Kenzo, but she knew that in the end, all of this situation mattered a lot to him. It's just like with a father, even if they don't show a close relationship, in the end, as a child, he can't hate his father. After returning to the cafe, it was almost 2 in the morning. I'm going to bed. If you want to sleep in my room, you can follow me. Good night. Kenzo waved his hand and entered his room. Don't even think about it. Good night. Tuka looked at Kenzo and then returned to her room. The night passed without anything remarkable. The next day, Kenzo woke up late as usual and, after taking a shower, went downstairs to presumably work in the cafe. Fortunately, there were no unnecessary questions today, but Kenzo realized that he now needed cash because he gave away all he had yesterday. In the past, Tuka used to wake him up every morning, but today she was unexpectedly absent. But Kenzo didn't know that she had also woken up late. Manager Yoshimura didn't say anything. He knew that his son seemed to have had a date with Tuka last night, so instead, he smiled and worked in a good mood. It's a surprise, Tuka woke up so late today. At that moment, Koma Ng teased Tuka, who still seemed half asleep. Leave me alone, yesterday was a very long night. Tuka replied calmly but quickly corrected herself after realizing what she had said, I stayed up late. Arima also smiled. It's really unusual for Tuka to stay up so late. At that moment, Kenzo came downstairs and sat down like a dead fish at the counter, which annoyed Tuka. If you're going to sleep, isn't it better to stay in bed for an extra hour? Then the old man won't pay me. Kenzo responded indifferently while playing with the cash register button. Who did you just call an old man? Koma Enji thought he had misheard but then looked at manager Yoshimura, who was standing nearby, and swallowed his words. Kenzo. When will you stop being so disrespectful? Koma Enji yelled, hiding his embarrassment. Mrs. Kaya, are you going to let your boyfriend shout at me like that? Kenzo uttered these words, and there was a deathly silence around. What did you say? Arima Kaya asked this question with veins popping out of her forehead. Never mind, I'm going to grab something to eat outside. Chapter 27, The Shadows. Secret Base of the Three-Eyed Crows. 3rd Division of the Black Crows. You won't rely on your Kagun to be stronger than other ghouls. You are warriors trained to completely eliminate the enemy, so if you want to overwhelm your enemy, you must first use human weapons. A ghoul held a sniper rifle and, with their acute senses, could aim at targets 1,000 meters away with relative ease. The greatest challenge they had overcome was at a distance of 1,500 meters. In addition to this, an ideal combat suit for ghouls and their respective weapons had been developed. Many of them were strong and didn't need it, while others believed it was unnecessary equipment, but none refused to accept this gift from one of the pillars of the organization. If CCG members were strong in fighting ghouls, the best way to eliminate them is from a distance with human weapons. The enemy had adapted to the ghoul fighting style for a long time, but now they themselves should adapt to the way CCG agents fight. In the training field, there were at least 200 ghouls fighting hand-to-hand without the need to use their Kagun, and all of them were skilled at it. They were not only well organized but extremely aggressive, as they didn't worry about injuries. This group is much better than the previous one, said an instructor while drinking a cup of coffee. District 20. In the CCG branch, there was chaos due to recent information obtained from District 19 that the group of ghouls known as the Shadows planned to take over District 20, which had been peaceful for years. The higher UPS didn't know why District 20 had been so quiet, even for ghouls from other districts. No other organization had wanted to enter District 20, and there had to be a reason for it. But recently, there were clues that ghouls might be attempting to enter District 20, so they needed to be prepared for a complete extermination of the pests. This is why the less experienced CCG branch had become a complete mess. Furthermore, many ghoul investigators had been injured in recent clashes with unidentified enemies, whom they had dubbed UT for unidentified targets due to their speculated ghoul-like superhuman strength. Things had been spiraling out of control lately, but surprisingly, there hadn't been any victims since the incident with the metal pipes and the injured boy. In addition to the investigators and the potential infestation of rampaging ghouls, everyone was preparing to increase surveillance and enhance security further. Kame Machi, who was the CCG branch director, was very agitated by the events unfolding in District 20, and everything was much more complex than initially perceived. Nakajima Yasunori was assigned to the investigation team, and he and his partner were responsible for monitoring the border between District 19 and 20 along with other investigators from District 19 who were in the area. Now, all the Class S ghoul investigators were prepared and assigned to different parts of the city to respond when the time came to eliminate the enemy. Yukinori Shinohara was one of the strongest, his defensive armor was one of his most powerful quinqua, and he was one of the toughest opponents one could face. Recently, they knew that two groups of ghouls had fought within District 20, but they didn't know if it was the group of monkeys and dogs that had been fighting for a long time or another organization. Everyone was very concerned about it, and they had no clues. At this moment, the CCG branch would have preferred to have been attacked by hundreds of ghouls rather than having to dig through all the hidden information right in front of their eyes. Additionally, Yukinori Shinohara had to deal with the problems posed by his new partner and the insistence on visiting some of the places he had investigated for a long time. Ghouls have always been a problem in District 20, so these issues are quite common within the facilities. Perhaps there was a monster in the district they hadn't noticed. Yukinori Shinohara had thought about this but reserved those thoughts for when he had solid evidence to support his claims. All right, that's all for today. What are we going to do with the man who came to cause trouble? He's so strong that he'd be an asset to the ghoul investigator force, which would benefit us a lot, to be honest. Hey, but I have a question, is he human? Asked Nakajima Yasunori, a transferred investigator. If he is really human, and his mother had been killed by ghouls, and in the wallet that was stolen from him, maybe there was the last photo he had of her, Yukinori Shinohara was concise with his words. That's bad, won't he hate us? He could easily be a Class S ghoul investigator with a quinqua, it's a pity he's a businessman, and he's genuinely a good person after looking into it a bit. And why does that matter? As far as we know, he's just a civilian. What we should do is focus on the potential ghoul stampede that might arrive here from District 19. We are not prepared for the impending massacre with all those hungry monsters. You're right, if we continue investigating him, we'll just anger that man. Yukinori Shinohara ended the meeting and stood up. Annoying brats, if they'd let me, I'd have turned him into minced meat by now. Kurio Mato stood up and left the room because he had a hunt to attend to. As exaggerated as always, ha ha ha. As Kurio Mato had said, a mother brought her daughter to Anteiku to get some meat after her father's death. But Kenzo was still sitting like a dead fish at the cash register. He had to maintain stability in what was happening and not lose strength before expanding, thinking about what had happened recently. He noticed that the girl who had come was named Hanami, and she was here because they needed shelter or something like that, he had heard. But when he saw the results of today's match, his face turned gloomy as he lost the big bet but won the small one. I always get the teams wrong, it's just that, and I'm not unlucky, mumbled Kenzo as he turned off his cell phone. I just want to see my father now, mother, why won't you let me see my father? Kenzo was pulled out of his thoughts by the girl's voice. Kenzo looked toward the upstairs rooms with slight suspicion. Had something happened that his people were unaware of? The girl Hanami covered her face, cried, got up, and then ran to another room. What's the situation? Kenzo looked puzzled and then glanced at his father. The mother and daughter had been welcomed by Anteiku long before their organization located them, which would likely cause problems later. Oh, it's just a little argument, don't worry, said manager Yoshimura as he washed dishes. It looks like they'll bring us problems. If things get bad in this place, Tuka and my security will be in danger. Should I take them elsewhere? Kenzo asked as he charged a kind elderly woman. It's not necessary, no one is looking for them, manager Yoshimura said with a simple smile. I'll find that out for myself. Chapter 28, What are you looking at? I'm sorry for bothering you. Ryoko, Hinami's mother, said apologetically to manager Yoshimura. It's okay. Compared to your little one, the males in my family can sometimes be even worse than this. Manager Yoshimura smiled and said indifferently. Was that a joke? Kenzo, who had heard these words from the side, was pleasantly surprised. The old man had actually compared him to a girl when he was an adult. However, Kenzo didn't say anything, he just lazily sat on the counter, lost in his own thoughts. At that moment, Ryoko also glanced at Kenzo. He should be around 22 years old by now, and she could detect a certain human scent covered by something that seemed very peculiar. Initially, Kenzo always had an expression of weariness, as if nothing around him mattered, so since they arrived at this cafe, both she and her daughter decided not to disturb him. Only now did Ryoko realize that he was manager Yoshimura's son, and his human smell was somewhat curious since there was only one way that could happen. What are you looking at? Kenzo raised his head at that moment and looked at Ryoko, the woman's eyes were always on him. He wasn't sensitive about it, but it could be an enemy, something he would try to eliminate as soon as possible. Ah! I'm sorry, I'm sorry. When Ryoko heard Kenzo's question, she quickly lowered her head and apologized. Because Kenzo's eyes were too dominant, and his body very muscular, she didn't dare to look at him directly again. Kenzo, you're scaring our guests, you can't be so rude to them. Manager Yoshimura reminded him at this moment. What? Are you joking again? How can my attitude be rude right now? Kenzo asked strangely. Haha, I told you, you look like a delinquent. At this moment, Koma Enji couldn't help but laugh because he knew Kenzo wasn't being rude, he just had a fierce face, and his usual tone of voice seemed a bit aggressive. Miss Ryoko, don't worry, actually, Kenzo has no malicious intentions. It's just that he's like that, and he usually talks that way. Koma Enji said while wearing a friendly expression. Who? So that's what it is. Mr. Yoshimura, please smile from time to time so you can appear kinder. Ryoko lowered her head again and said in a kind tone. My name is Kenzo, you can just call me by my name. Kenzo was a little annoyed, but wanting to know more, he asked, by the way, which district are you from? What? Kenzo stared at the woman in front of him and said, well, I'd be an idiot not to realize that you're on the run, so I'd be interested in knowing more about your situation so maybe I could get you a safe house in one of the secure areas managed by the group I belong to. Knowing that she might possibly be a ghoul investigation case, sooner or later, doves would arrive in the vicinity, and those in charge of hunting Kyoko would soon know more about her. In that case, he couldn't leave her in this place, and the smartest thing to do would be to hide her for a few months in one of his nearby bases. You don't seem to be an enemy. I startled myself a moment ago with the thoughts I was having. Still, leaving you here is a risk for both me and the others, Kenzo thought with a calm look directed at the slightly uncomfortable woman. What are you talking about, Kenzo? Koma-ng was the most confused in this situation. What was Kenzo, who didn't care about most of the problems that happened here, doing? We come from District 24. The doves in that place have become much more common, so we escaped. Just as Kenzo was about to ask another question, Kyoko suddenly spoke. You ran away just for that? Kenzo raised his eyebrows, a bit confused. Didn't you have a solid identity in District 24? What kind of excuse was that for escaping? It should be more than that, and there must have been other reasons for their escape. Their identity should have been well integrated into society for them to live comfortably. She didn't have any difficulties like other ghouls, so something else must have happened, but he decided not to delve deeper into it. About that. Kenzo interrupted her before she could speak and said, I actually don't care. I'll be very honest with you, they will soon arrive in this district. I mean the ghoul investigators you're running from. I highly doubt you came all the way here just because of the CCG's increase. They should be investigating your whereabouts right now. If that's the case, you'll be put on the list of ghouls to be hunted, so you won't be able to have a normal life for a while. The only way would be to dye your hair, create fake records, identifications, and move to a residence near this place. At the same time, you should stay hidden for a few months with your daughter. If you are really running away, just call this number when you're ready, and they will help you with all those problems. This. In exchange for what? Kyoko knew that these things were tempting, but she was also aware that all these things wouldn't be given to her just like that. Take it as a welcome gift. You can work in a place of your choice, and the need to hunt for survival will be obsolete. It's a problem for you to stay here, your daughter should be well cared for, as it would be a problem if she escapes while you're not looking. Kyoko was lost in thought. Although she had heard of Anteiku, she had never heard rumors of another group of ghouls besides them. If the things he told her were true, then she should accept this help with great gratitude and integrate into this district as soon as possible. She knew that Kenzo seemed to have discovered everything she was hiding with a few words of exchange, so if her stay here was a problem, she should go to that place he recommended as soon as possible. No one, not even Manager Yoshimura, said anything about it, so this should be true. Ryoko felt that it might be impolite not to respond to this man's kindness, so she said, I'll call this number as soon as possible. You don't have to rush, you can stay with us for as long as you like. Koma-ng knew that Kenzo practically wanted to rush Kyoka. At this point, Kenzo leaned against the counter and said, you should know better than anyone that the crows can protect her better than this cafe can. So it's smarter to let them do the work than be selfish at this point. Manager Yoshimura smiled and said, Mrs. Kyoko, you can trust my son's words. It might be hasty, but you will be much more comfortable in a place that will be entirely yours, where others like you live peacefully. That's true, Koma-ng didn't know how Kenzo could communicate with the crows, but it was undeniable that the system they managed could support thousands of ghouls without any problems, and all their businesses were absolutely safe. I see, thank you very much for your help, Mr. Kenzo. Kyoko, seeing that it bothered Kenzo to be called by his last name, called him by his first name directly. Well, all right, but you should go to your daughter first, who is angry. Kenzo waved his hand to indicate that she should go and not bother him. Thank you. Ryoko nodded, then turned and went up the stairs. Kenzo continued to sit at the counter and think about the problem. Now that the doves were becoming more aggressive, he needed to send a message. After all, it's simply impossible to let them take the advantage on the streets that will be his in the future. But before making any flashy moves against the CCG investigators, the first thing he would do is attack District 19, take it under his command, and from there, start moving between the other districts. Thinking about it, Kenzo simply kept thinking about the many things he would do afterward. Hey, Kenzo, why did you sleep all afternoon? At this moment, Tuka's voice sounded, waking Kenzo up. Why did I do that? Kenzo wanted to go out all night and deal with some issues, so that's the first thing he'll do after today. Hey, I bought you the coffee candies you like. Tuka handed him a bag of the coffee candies Kenzo loved so much. I appreciate it. Kenzo tried one of the candies, and as expected, they were his favorites. Kenzo, are you free later? Tuka sat next to Kenzo and asked with a smile. Not tonight, but we could have a date on the weekend. Kenzo knew what Tuka was referring to, so he was also interested in their relationship. Upon hearing this, Tuka wondered, where are you going? I'll tell you on the weekend, what do you say? Kenzo asked as his gaze drew closer to Tuka's. Stay safe. Tuka said as she closed her eyes and let Kenzo kiss her. Chapter 29, An Airwave. The cold wind was disrupted by the icy gusts that swept through the outskirts of District 20, bringing with it the chill from far-off regions. In no time, a light rain began to blanket the surroundings. The forceful winds kept on blowing time and time again. At this late hour of the night, few people roamed the streets as most had chosen to stay at home, making the most of the cozy weather to spend the rest of the day in bed. The cold was perfect for indulging in activities that could only be enjoyed indoors. But while others enjoyed their home comforts, non-humans had different plans, and that's when a nighttime battle erupted. Who are these damn guys following us? Shouted a man who moved between the rooftops of the houses in District 20 towards an unknown location. A man wearing a monster mask ran alongside him and, after identifying the faces of the enemies, said, "They are the Black Crows of the 3rd Division. We have privileged information that they are the weakest within the Three-Eyed Crow organization. However, they are as deadly as ghoul investigators since they employ human weapons and rarely use their kagun." Just behind them were about 5 more figures advancing as a group, but at this moment, the sound of a gunshot rang out not far from their position, and in the blink of an eye, one of the ghouls attempting to force their way into District 20 was hit in the leg. Bang! Bang! In just moments, the hooded ghoul's chest and head exploded like a watermelon. The shots came from at least 500 meters away, and the caliber of the bullets was so large that even a normal kagun would have difficulty defending against such an attack. They're surrounded, don't dare to move a single muscle, or you'll die within seconds. Yelled a voice loud enough for the group of 7 to halt at what appeared to be a factory under repair. My name is Viper, the second pillar in the high-ranking crow position. How dare you invade our territory and leave a colossal mess behind that we had to clean up? Viper stepped forward, his face is glowing with a scarlet hue, and he stared at the invaders. The man who seemed to be the leader of the invaders frowned and muttered, I'm Takashi. Mr. Takashi, do you know that you are invading the territory of another organization and causing a massive disturbance in the stability we maintain in this area? Viper took a step forward, while his bloodthirsty aura and killing intent overflowed from his body. Are you the farmers? It's quite ironic that you address me with that tone of disdain. Although you outnumber us, our combat experience will ultimately crush those little ghouls who don't know how to survive without their babysitters. Takashi's statement was quite serious. However, the crow-masked ghouls remained calm, as if those words didn't affect them in the slightest. To them, these invading ghouls were simply trash that they would have to clean up sooner or later. They had carefully cleaned up District 20, and there wasn't a ghoul in the vicinity who wasn't registered with them or Anteiku. So, for now, they maintained control over the entire area and planned to expand first into District 19, as it was the neighboring district. Then I'll kill you all! Takashi shouted, immediately unleashing his powerful kagun. His eyes turned suddenly crimson, and he moved at superhuman speed toward Viper. No other ghouls decided to act. They all instinctively decided that the outcome of this battle would be more than enough to determine a winner. Takashi, with his scissor-shaped kagun, launched a swift attack aimed at cleaving Viper, who remained motionless. Viper's kagun was a rinkaku, but due to cannibalism, it mutated into an extremely special form that made him one of the fastest ghouls among the districts. Even Kenzo himself would be unable to catch him if Viper decided to run at high speed. So, he unfurled part of his kagun on his back, took a breath, and stepped forward. In just a few short moments, he coiled a portion of his kagun around his right hand and, like a sharp sword, exceeded the speed that Takashi expected. He wasn't used to fighting very often, but he was known for being the Crow Master's blade, secretly called the Skull Splitter. Crack! His tremendous speed startled everyone in the vicinity, including the crows who were part of the attack squad. They were newcomers who had seen little of the pillars, and now, in the presence of one of the strongest, they could only open their eyes wide to gain experience. Boom! The kagun struck the building's wall with force, destroying everything in its path. But what no one realized was that Viper had used his kagun to cut Takashi's neck. Viper stopped, retracted his kagun, and looked at the man who had chosen to die for a foolish ideology. If you had decided to engage in a conversation, maybe you'd have survived. But your Kagun will be put to good use by capable crows who know how to follow orders. Gasping for air, Takashi turned very slowly, searching for Viper's eyes filled with coldness. How did I lose? Takashi's decapitated body fell to the ground, leaving everyone frozen with shock and fear. How was it so fast? That's what everyone would wonder in this situation, but no one knew the answer. Nobody knew it. The research conducted by Class S ghouls has a lot to do with their cells and how each of them controls them. What? Have you made a decision? All the ghouls who felt confident because Takashi was a Class S ghoul fell silent, and their faces turned pale. The ghouls had clearly heard about District 20 and knew it was relatively peaceful, so as long as they behaved, there should be no problems. However, just minutes after entering District 20, problems arose, and one died quite easily. Slightly irritated, Viper pointed at them and said, "All of you can share the vision of the crows. Join us, and we will protect you from any harm. Your usefulness will demonstrate the value we'll give you in the future. You won't kill us, will you? Why should we do that?" Expressions of confusion appeared on the faces of the ghouls who clearly thought they were about to die the same way as Takashi. They had considered ways to escape, but given Viper's speed, they would eventually be caught, not to mention the other ghouls nearby. "If you don't make a decision, you will die here. We're not usually so aggressive, but lately, we've been under attack by an unknown enemy. So, what decision will you make?" Viper retracted his hand with some impatience. "So, if you allow us to follow you, we'd be happy to join your organization." One of the ghouls knew that this wouldn't be so easy, but it was better than dying as Takashi did. Viper, who nodded upon hearing the response, said, "Then you will be escorted to a nearby base. There, you will eat and subsequently answer some quite simple questions. After that, you will have to pass an examination, which means you will be integrated into one of the ghoul branches based on your qualities. Thank you very much." Stepping away from that group, Viper took out his phone and called Kenzo. "I have new information, after confirming it, I'll tell you in person." Good work." Kenzo's response was simple and without any additional doubt. Everyone knew that this would happen sooner or later, and they were ready to respond aggressively to any violation. Chapter 30, The Cruelty of the Night. The night soon enveloped all of Tokyo. But this night seemed much darker than usual, making it easier for a figure to move through the buildings at a remarkable speed. As he had heard, in District 14, a significant battle had taken place within the underground facilities due to a dispute between two fairly new groups of ghouls who, driven by greed and dominance, ended up in a bloody battle. However, what neither of these two groups expected was for another group to suddenly appear and attack them by surprise. This caused the group that entered the desperate District 20 to be followed by their pursuers, who were killed by Kenzo's crows, necessitating him to take personal action. If their plan to take District 19 is one of their large-scale missions, weakening District 14 would be the first target. Stability often requires a firm hand of discipline and intelligence. Kenzo moved between the buildings like a ghost. His speed, while not surpassing Viper's, was still terrifying and much faster than any other ghoul. In the darkness of the night, it was difficult to see Kenzo's figure, and with his Kagun propelling his speed, he was like a shadow moving swiftly through the buildings. 15 minutes had passed since Kenzo started moving. After that, he descended into District 14, where a large number of ghouls gathered. In the middle of the night, unlike other places such as District 20, there were fewer people here. Boom! Suddenly, a figure with an enormous Kagun on its left shoulder descended from the sky, causing a violent explosion that raised a large dust cloud. Falling from a height of probably hundreds of meters, the sensation it caused was too overwhelming to be processed by an ordinary person. The ground beneath Kenzo's feet sank as he raised his head and observed his surroundings. District 14. This place was very popular, and Kenzo was sure he must have confused it with another location. There are 24 districts, with only District 24 being underground. Among them, there were 4 districts from 1 to 4, which were essentially uninhabitable for ghouls because they were infested with doves. CCG agents moved like wasps, and their control over these districts was something ghouls couldn't challenge. However, District 14 is a well-known common district where ghouls can still live comfortably, and many famous people visit here. Well, someone's coming. A few minutes later, Kenzo had dealt with a group of ghouls who wanted to eat him due to his persistent human scent. Blood dripped from Kenzo's hands, and crimson drops flew around, giving him a somewhat dark appearance. The clothing Kenzo wore today was simple, his usual attire but with a completely black trench coat. These colors were chosen primarily to avoid his clothes getting stained with blood too easily. Crack! Holding a ghoul by his neck, Kenzo lifted him to face level and asked, "Do you know where the ghouls who call themselves the 12 monkeys gather?" "I don't know." "Then you're of no use to me." Kenzo simply exerted more force than usual and ended the life of this hungry ghoul. As Kenzo walked, there were several screams because many ghouls were drawn to the scent of human blood in this place. By now, blood was dripping from Kenzo's face and hands. "We should expand faster than usual, the situation is regrettable in these districts." Kenzo had been attacked simply for smelling like a human, and the ghouls in this place were starving. If they were so weak, they should have done something to remedy it. They were close to District 20, so this would be much easier to handle if they requested accommodation. This district was popular among ghouls, and they often gathered here. After dealing with some annoying enemies, Kenzo's figure disappeared. His influence in this place was minimal, so he needed to find a place to gather news, and he knew exactly where to find it. There's a bar in District 14 called Helter Skelter, which serves as an intelligence hub for those seeking valuable information, as rumors in that place are always abundant. The proprietress is named Idari, an attractive woman with long, red hair cascading down her back with a middle part. She has a well-defined curvaceous figure, and she typically wears clothing that accentuates her provocative figure with a low-cut top and tight skirt. Today, many people had gathered at this bar. Among them, at the reception, Idari was receiving two important guests, namely two high-ranking members of the 12 Monkeys group. The Spider, one of the 12 Monkeys, and a robust ghoul named the Giant were the ghouls Idari was talking to. "Idari, have you heard? They say Organization V entered District 20, and none of them returned alive. Many claim that the group of crows handled it, but no one believes them since the so-called crows are just scavengers." Idari sat at the reception with a significant smile as she listened to these rumors, then replied, "Well, I've heard something, and they say the leader of that ghoul group is too strong." "Well, I'm not so sure about that." The Spider, a tall ghoul, took these rumors as a jest. "I wouldn't think of it that way. They've said he doesn't need to use his Kagun to kill ghouls below the A rank. If that's not astonishing, I don't know what could surpass it. Relying solely on physical abilities is something to be greatly feared, isn't it?" Idari smiled charmingly after making these remarks. "It seems you know a lot about him. Is there anything you could tell us that we don't already know about him? If you only tell us he's a strong man, then that information wouldn't be of much use to us." The Giant, a 2-meter-tall burly man, shook his head. Idari smiled, then said, "He's more than just strong, many say he could be an SSS-class ghoul. What more can I tell you about him? They call him the Master Crow, a man who moves through the night, and rumors say he'll eventually make his way to this district." Just hearing that title is quite chilling. In this world, no one dares to call themselves that, let alone classify as an SSS. But the title of the strongest isn't unfounded. Kenzo never left his enemies alive, and that's something only his allies knew. Not only was he prepared to kill, but he also knew how to do it, so it wasn't a problem for him to eliminate a group of ghouls relatively easily. Rumors even said that now District 20 was in the hands of the Master Crow. When you encounter him, the only relevant thing you can do is run. Since some of Kenzo's victims are left as they are so that people don't forget, many of them know how brutal he is on the battlefield. Be careful with him, he tends to eliminate anyone who stands in the way of his mysterious desires, Idari said with a slightly uneasy expression. "Do you think the 12 monkeys we have are just dealing with a simple crow? I heard they sent a squad to District 20 to hunt down a group of troublemakers, so we'll soon hear some answers. In reality, I also know a secret message. I wonder if you want to hear it," Idari said mysteriously at this moment. "What?" The two ghouls belonging to the 12 monkeys were interested in hearing more about it. "I heard that this ghoul will move soon. His desires are unclear, but it's certain he'll expand his influence, so he'll be in this district soon." Idari felt very comfortable giving this kind of information. She could see the fear in these two repulsive individuals sitting before her. Crack! At this moment, a glass was broken, drawing the attention of those around. "This is my mistake." Idari smiled naturally. She knew that some of the things she was saying should not be taken lightly. TOC. At that moment, someone knocked on the bar's door. Well, is there another guest here? Idari looked toward the door. Boom! Suddenly, a loud noise was heard, and the bar's door was smashed open by a powerful kick. It's not closed yet, so why is the door closed? A man with a scar across his mouth entered slowly and looked around indifferently. This guy? How is he here? Idari knew this man, he should be Ito's brother, who frequented this place. Chapter 31, Seeking Information. In the bar, aside from Idari, who was the owner of the establishment, there was a girl in the back named Hoito Roma, ghouls from the 12 monkeys group called Giganti and Arana, as well as a group of monkeys who remained silent in the vicinity. All of them directed their gaze towards the door where Kenzo stood. His muscular appearance and sharp gaze caused everyone to fall into momentary silence, as if they wanted to assess something beyond just his appearance, his intentions. As for Idari, her heart tightened because she knew that man. Wouldn't it be too coincidental? This man who had just kicked down the door was someone special to Ito. She had shown him a photograph and explicitly asked Idari to help him if he ever needed assistance. Furthermore, she had also warned her to alert her if any kind of problem arose. Human scent, interesting. Kenzo looked coldly at the people around, and for a moment, his eyes fixed on Idari, the woman who seemed to have recognized him. At that very moment, however, the ghouls behind the captains of the group known as the 12 monkeys stood up. When they saw Kenzo, a question popped into their heads: what is District 14? He would only respond that this place is a meeting point where clowns are common and a dangerous area for humans. Crack! A brave ghoul stood up and walked in front of Kenzo, who was merely looking at them as if they were dolls. But what words you say, this place hasn't closed yet, on the contrary, we might soon have a great dinner. After the ghoul from the 12 monkeys group stood up, he let out a growl and used his open hand to openly grab Kenzo's throat. When this apparent strong blow was launched against him, Kenzo was still at a considerable distance, and the speed was not impressive at all. Both the power and the angle of this attack were doomed to fail from the start. Kenzo simply dodged the attack and, with his left hand, casually held the ghoul's hand. However, his eyes changed to a crimson hue, and he said in a cold tone, "Did you really plan to attack me with your feeble strength?" A mere ghoul who barely knows how to use the power of his Kagun correctly dared to openly attack him, revealing his intentions to eat him? These intentions angered Kenzo. Squeezing the hand of this idiotic ghoul, he applied some simple force. With a crack, the ghoul's hand bent like a broken branch. Ah! The ghoul suddenly let out a piercing pain that resonated from every corner of the bar. Kenzo lifted the ghoul who had lost strength in his legs. His right hand at that moment began to faintly glow in a crimson shade before forming a fist and crashing into the heart of this useless ghoul. Crack! As if Kenzo were cutting through a small piece of paper, he pierced the heart of this useless ghoul, causing blood to splatter on his face. "I don't have time to waste on useless people like you, a pity for you to be the first to set an example in this place," Kenzo said as he threw the ghoul's body away as if it were trash. This scene left everyone feeling completely stifled, wondering, who the hell is this man who just killed a ghoul with such ease? As for why he appeared in District 14, no one knows, let alone what his intentions are in this place. Considering everything, everyone remained silent. "If it's not closed, then I'll have a strong drink, madam." Kenzo, holding the ghoul's heart in his hand, threw it to the ground, and the blood on his hand slowly began to disappear. "Oh, all right," Idari was the one who then reacted. As a woman who knew how to survive in this dark world, witnessing a death was nothing more than an insignificant event in her eyes. But she knew that this wouldn't end with just that death because the one he had just killed had a much larger group in this place that hadn't moved yet. "I should apologize, not only did I mess up your floor, but I also destroyed your door. You can take this money as an apology, I'm sure it will be of some help for the repairs." Kenzo took out a wad of money and slowly drank this strong alcoholic beverage. It's worth mentioning that he had never drunk this type of drink before, so it was a completely new experience. "It's fine," said Idari with a forced smile. "Let me introduce myself first. My name is Kenzo, and you only need to know my name because it's the only thing you'll be hearing from now on. I come from District 20, and I believe some people here might know me. After all, I tend to be in very conspicuous places," Kenzo said, trying to gain the attention of the still-dazed ghouls. There were only two people in this place who knew him. The first was Idari, and the second was Hoito Roma, who had seen Kenzo in the incident with the beams. She had seen his face after he removed the ghoul mask before getting into the car. Yes, she was involved in that incident in a somewhat unrelated way, but she was at the scene. As agreed, she, as the leader of the Clown Ghouls group, had to ensure that no one interfered in the capture of Riz. Unfortunately, she was very intelligent and decided not to start a battle that she knew perfectly well she would lose that night. There was a striking man in the corner who had made the mask for Kenzo, the only one who knew his identity as the Crow Master, which he himself had allowed. His name was Yuta, a man who belonged to the clown group. As for the others, Kenzo wouldn't bother getting to know them because it would be a hassle to leave them alive, but he wasn't here to kill, he wanted to find a group of ghouls in District 14, and that's why he came to this place. Mr. Kenzo, can you tell me what you're doing in my bar? Just here for a drink. Idari asked Kenzo with curiosity as he calmly sipped his wine. She wasn't actually curious because she knew perfectly well that Kenzo wasn't here for a drink. Who in their right mind would come from District 20 to District 14 just for a drink? Oh, it seems I didn't mention it. I came to this place to gather information. I heard that I could find some answers to some of my questions around here, so that's why I came to this place specifically. Kenzo lit a cigarette and explained his purpose for being there in simple terms. Is that so? Idari smiled and waited for him to ask. Can you tell me if you've heard about a group of ghouls who call themselves the 12 Monkeys? I also want to know what you know about the Organization V. Kenzo spoke in a much louder tone as if he wanted to provoke someone. When Idari heard these words, she showed a surprised expression, and her eyes darted toward the man known as the Gigante and the Spider. For some reason, no one made a move against Kenzo, so maybe something else was going on. Idari didn't react to this, but when Roma heard these questions, her face paled slightly. She had been involved in the incident with the beams, so maybe Kenzo was here because he noticed there were more ghouls nearby. The 12 Monkeys organization, I've heard something about them. Their leader is a current Ghoul SS. This pro is in this area, and their influence is quite significant, and their organization is thriving. Really, that's not bad information, Kenzo smiled slightly. I don't know what your issues are with them, but we might be able to offer you help in solving these problems without the need to shed blood. Idari said this with a kind smile. You can't help me. As soon as the words fell, the atmosphere suddenly became more tense. One more thing, what about the Organization V? Organization V? I'm sorry, I know a bit about this organization, but not much. What do you want to know? Why don't you tell me? Idari asked, and her curiosity was piqued at that moment. Curiosity killed the cat, do you really want to know? When Kenzo raised his gaze, his piercing look was now directed at Idari, who seemed to have grown confident too quickly. This. Of course, I wouldn't kill someone who knows more about me than they might think. So you shouldn't worry too much about these things, do you believe me? Chapter 32, Do you know who I am? If you don't believe me, there's no need to force yourself to do so. I don't like killing women. Kenzo used specific wording to make everyone understand his words. He wasn't here to play or drink, he was on a hunt. In fact, he didn't have high hopes of finding information about the Organization V in a place like this, let alone obtaining it easily. After all, as the Organization V is one of the most mysterious forces, the dark information it holds is naturally hard to come by. I'm sorry I couldn't be of much help. Idari said with a slightly nervous voice. Don't worry, it seems the people who have been eyeing me as if I were a big piece of meat they can easily bite into have made their decision. Kenzo smiled as he spoke these words, his face slowly revealing extreme madness, as if he had been waiting for it for a long time. Today, a very special person has come to District 14. Just as Kenzo expected, a very deep voice was heard next to him. That voice reminds me of my high school teacher, I honestly hated that sick bastard. Kenzo turned his crystal glass, in which he was drinking, and looked up at the source of the voice. Idari, who saw this, only stepped back slowly to avoid being affected by what was about to happen. Because the man in the red suit was the one they called the Gigante of the 12 Monkeys group, and he had recently become well known in District 14. It was said that he was a ghoul of SS class, but those were mere speculations. Beside him was the man known as the Arima, and there were a dozen more ghouls behind them, gazing at Kenzo with gleaming eyes. After all, they wanted to pounce on Kenzo in the first second to kill him, but because their bosses didn't move, they remained calm. Who is he? Kenzo briefly glanced at the Gigante and then looked at Idari. He's an important figure in the 12 Monkeys group that they're looking for. They call him the Gigante, and they say he's a very violent man when he fights. Idari told Kenzo these words in almost a whisper. Kenzo only smiled briefly. His eyes, which hadn't returned to normal, stared intensely at these figures, and he actually welcomed this situation. Knowing that a confrontation was imminent, he took off his coat, and the muscles underneath his black t-shirt revealed his incredible physical condition. That's why my men didn't communicate after entering District 20. It turns out they were killed by your people. But it seems my revenge has come much sooner than expected, don't you think? The Gigante approached the bar right next to Kenzo, looked briefly at Idari, and asked dryly. The Gigante's eyes sometimes gleamed with a deep murderous intent and at other times with persistent madness, especially when he looked at Kenzo, displaying a deep look filled with a desire to kill. I apologize, I can't answer your question. Both of you are special guests in the bar, and I have no intention of favoring either side. Idari wasn't foolish, she knew the Gigante's question was a trap to make her choose a side. Do you mean a dozen of your men who deserted to District 20 and are currently participating in an evaluation trial to join my people killed your men? If so, then I must respond to the threats of my little students. At that moment, Kenzo smiled contemptuously as he looked at the Gigante as if he were looking at trash. Oh! The Gigante looked at Kenzo and then sniffed lightly, catching a whiff of a human scent. Haha, a dog like you doesn't know how to feed properly? Too bad for you, I only let myself be bitten by my dear girlfriend. Do you think I won't rip your head off for looking at me with those eyes? Kenzo's tone turned cold as he spoke those last words. What? The Gigante froze. In the scene, everyone fell silent. The Arana knew of the Gigante's brutality, so he waited for what would happen. Ha ha ha, well, what a piece of trash. The Gigante laughed because after making a name for himself in District 14, someone from a weak district like District 20 dared to address him in such a tone. Even strong organizations preferred to be on good terms with the Gigante, as they might want him as part of their force in the future. But now, someone talked to him in such a tone after killing one of his men, it was the biggest joke he had ever heard in his life. Do you really think I can't rip your head off? Kenzo spoke again, but this time he asked a question. Oh, it seems they've underestimated me. Interesting, do you know who I am? The Gigante smiled and asked. I do know you're a monkey. Didn't you hear the owner of this place just tell me? Kenzo, who stood up and walked toward the Gigante, although his body was still behind the man in front, slowly revealed part of his kagun, and his right arm began to bubble. I prefer not to talk when I hunt. After saying that, as if time had slowed down, Kenzo bent his body, and with his right hand not yet fully forming his kagun, he struck the Gigante's chest at a speed that no one expected. Crack! Muscles, ribs, joints. The enormous arm of Kenzo was capable of exerting a contained impact of 200 kilograms, and in a raw state with his kagun formed, it could be as much as 800 kilograms to a ton. Such a magnitude of impact alone is enough to turn bones into dust, and the scene that followed left everyone in shock. Crack! Boom! The Gigante's body flew like a comet, finally crashing into the wall. His words were stuck in his throat because all he did was spit out blood. At that point, his chest bones had pierced his internal organs. Ah! That's why Kenzo never needs to fully form his primary kagun, one of the two he possesses, and this is the reason. No one can withstand a blow of 200 kilograms, let alone one of a ton, so it's a waste of energy and time. You damn bastard! At that moment, the Arana released his kagun, and long kaguns emerged from the back of the ghoul who was the Gigante's companion. It was now clear why he was called the Arana, his unique kagun gave him the appearance of a spider. Crack! 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 Without moving, Kenzo suffered penetrating wounds on his leg, left arm, and abdomen simultaneously. But after being injured, a sinister smile formed on his face, and he spat out blood slightly. Numerous drops moved forward like bullets, and the Arana's chest ended up pierced by these simple drops of blood. Og! At the same time, Kenzo didn't wait to be attacked and took advantage of the Arana's confusion from the open wounds on his chest. An enormous red fist instantly appeared over his face. In a curtain of blood, the entire face of the Arana disappeared completely, and his headless body fell to the ground. It's not possible. A spout of blood shot up into the sky, and taking advantage of this confusion, Kenzo moved like a demon toward the other ghouls who hadn't been forgotten. Ah! The Gigante, who was healing very slowly, watched in horror as all his subordinates were completely massacred by a man gone completely mad. It wasn't worth it, dying in this way wasn't worth it, and he knew it. At least I should take responsibility. The Gigante thought this, but when he looked up again, only one was left standing. The bar, now completely clean, was bathed in blood, and no complete bodies remained. I only need to know where your base is. You don't need to answer, but if you want to live, you must know what to do to achieve it. Kenzo sat a ghoul down who was missing both hands, and he nodded, completely traumatized. Kenzo, covered in blood, disappeared from his position and appeared behind the Gigante, holding his head by the nape of his neck. Having previously held the eye sockets of some eyes, he shoved them into the Gigante's mouth. Since you're hungry, you should eat, you damn dog. Ugh! The brave heart of the Gigante finally tightened with fear at this moment. In Kenzo's hands, he couldn't even gather the strength to resist his strong attacks. Crack! Crack! Somehow, both arms of the Gigante fell to the ground in a burst of blood. Ah! When the screams were heard again, Kenzo immediately crushed the Gigante's head and then tore it out by the roots. This scene made all the remaining people feel fear. The scene in front of them was something they had never dreamed of being in, and even some of them were so scared that they couldn't breathe properly. In just a few minutes, only 4 ghouls remained, besides Kenzo, who stood amidst the corpses. Chapter 33, The Formidable Kenzo. Come on, let's eat together. Kenzo walked slowly toward the surviving ghoul and, after taking the Gigante's kagun, took a big bite. Blood spilled from his lips, and the bitter taste of this kagun made him frown, and he reluctantly swallowed it. I'm so sorry, I'll do whatever you want, just don't kill me. The ghoul who had witnessed the entire massacre was trembling in terror due to Kenzo's appearance, and since he had killed all his enemies, it was a surprise to still be alive, a unique opportunity not to die. In that state, he was useless to Kenzo, so he stopped. Forgive me. The ghoul spoke at that moment, and he, who was recognized as a fearsome ghoul from the Dochemanos group, bowed his head and was willing to do anything to survive. Everyone was perplexed, and some couldn't believe what they were hearing. In District 14, the ghouls from the Dochemanos group seemed very cruel on the surface, but in fact, they were all cowards. The reason they all became cruel was only to survive in the harsh districts. Furthermore, the only way to become stronger is to be a cannibal with one's own kind, evolving to the point of forming a powerful Kakuja that makes them much more powerful. It is true that Kenzo did not have to do this for long to create a Kakuja armor that covered his entire body, but that was because he was very good at controlling his Kagun. Have you heard? The massive increase in doves in District 23 has caused many ghouls to migrate to other districts in a panic. I wonder if that would change just by being more disciplined. What can you say about that, my dear ghoul? Intimidating the weak is something Kenzo does quite well after defeating them. It is very common to do this in these situations. He needed information, and the only way to get it was through the ghoul he had left alive specifically to question. I guess it's time for me to introduce myself, so I've decided to take control of District 14 from now on. A race against time is about to begin. This must be done quickly and without many issues. I don't want the doves near District 14 because I have to create an excellent environment. Kenzo sat on the side of the ghoul, completely ignoring the situation in the bar, and he just looked at Itari in the distance and said, I'm sorry about the bar, as compensation, you could have a better place and manage it for the organization I belong to. What do you say? It's not necessary, I'll clean it up later. Itari felt really bad about the state of her bar. No fights had taken place here because everyone knew who she was, but that was something a newcomer who had just stepped into District 14 didn't know. Kenzo knew this, but he decided to ignore it. He understood that ghouls didn't cause problems in places like these to avoid drawing attention. However, that was something he didn't care about, as when his members entered this place, all independent businesses would fall into the hands of the three-eyed crows. Cough, let me go. The ghoul continued to beg for mercy, he just wanted to live. Let me go. I won't tell anything to the higher UPS in my organization. Kenzo assumed this idiotic ghoul wouldn't realize his fate, but it seemed he was completely wrong. You know it, I want information on where the Dochemanos are hiding. You will need to find a way in your tiny brain, and in exchange, you will have a place in my organization when all of this is over. Isn't that better than nothing? We will protect you, feed you, and at the end of the day, you'll be the only survivor, which is all that matters. Kenzo put an arm around the ghoul's shoulder. The ghoul, shuddering with Kenzo's hand around his neck, asked, What do you want me to do? You must know I'm a small member of my organization, so I can't do much. Are you sure you want to trust me? You don't trust your own abilities. It's not that. They will notice when I lie because the leader of the Dochemanos is an extremely dangerous and cautious man. And maybe he'll know I'm lying when I start talking about what happened here. So, there's little I can do for you without him killing me and knowing that I'm lying directly. Kenzo's expression softened even more, and he said, that's why you'll tell him the truth, you don't need to lie about it. In the end, you'll be able to survive until he comes to you. So tell me, can you create an opportunity where they're all gathered in one place? In 2 days, there will be a meeting where all the members will gather to celebrate gaining control of District 14 after exterminating the other 2 groups in this district, the Ghoul said with increasing calmness as he saw that Kenzo wasn't causing him any harm. In 2 days, a perfect time to mobilize a sufficient group of ghouls to quell them, Kenzo thought coldly and nodded, seeing it clearly. He got up, walked to a bottle of whiskey, and poured himself a drink. At this point, what he planned was not total extermination but partial. He would eliminate the leader in a one-on-one combat, and the victor would become the ruler of Districts 14 and 20. Both theoretically had a lot to offer, so it would be a fair battle for anyone who wanted to reign as the leader. After drinking and wiping his face, Kenzo said simply, you will run to your leader and tell him that your group was ambushed by twice as many ghouls who were with you. Then you will tell him that it's a group of ghouls with intentions to take over this district, so he should send an invitation for his next meeting. The ghoul was surprised and replied, wouldn't that give his enemy the opportunity to prepare? The leader of the Dochemanos is not at all foolish, he'll plan a way to kill him at that meeting. You don't have to worry about anything other than what you've been tasked with, so you can go. After these words, Kenzo noticed from the corner of his eye that a figure sped by just in front of the door, and within seconds, it launched several blood projectiles even before the ghoul at his side moved. It takes some diabolic training to reach this level of reaction, and most ghouls can't do it at all. Take care of killing that ghoul when you leave. By the way, what's your name? Before leaving, Kenzo asked a question. They call me Rafe. Then, Rafe, I trust you will do a good job, Kenzo said without looking at him again. After he left, the surroundings fell silent. Kenzo said once more, Idari, if you're interested in creating an excellent nightlife place without any trouble, you can get in touch with me. I promise to offer you great benefits, as well as the opportunity to acquire food without exposing yourself. Alright, I'll think about it. Idari couldn't refuse out of fear of angering this man. Okay, let's continue with some questions I have for you. I assume no one else has intentions of causing trouble. So, aside from Mr. Yuta, who is reliable, I must assume that the young lady in the corner will keep quiet if she wants to live. Kenzo briefly glanced at the girl in the corner of the bar who gave him a somewhat curious look. Mr. Kenzo, if you have any questions to ask, just ask, and as far as I know, I'll tell you. Idari resolved her emotions and then directed a friendly smile at Kenzo. Chapter 34, I knew it from the beginning. Since I received nothing I wanted from the previous questions, I would like to know what you know about the clown organization, Kenzo said very slowly, showing a somewhat disinterested look. But as soon as his words were heard, both Idari, Yuta, and Hoito Roma, who were the only ones in the bar besides Kenzo, were surprised at the same time. The clown organization? Isn't that the organization they belong to? Yes, the only 3 people in the bar right now, apart from Kenzo, are affiliated with that organization. Mr. Kenzo, why do you want to inquire about this organization? Idari asked with a smile after regaining her senses and composure. Kenzo's fingers slid the crystal glass, and then he shattered it into pieces. What? Idari was taken aback by this sudden scene, and her delicate body trembled slightly. I'm sorry, I broke one of your glasses. Kenzo waved his hand over the bar and tossed the shards onto the floor. You don't have to worry. Idari's forehead was a bit sweaty, but she still replied to Kenzo with a forced smile. Hoito Roma, the girl who was in the corner of the bar, frowned, wondering what Kenzo wanted with all these senseless questions. So, Miss Idari, how much do you know about the clown organization? Kenzo continued to inquire once more after a few seconds. Not much, actually. The clown organization is very mysterious, and its members are even more difficult to identify with any known identity. There are no data on their member count, activity zones, or attacks reported by the CCG. It is claimed that the clowns are not a group, but when they act, their exceptional teamwork is evident. Kenzo was very interested in this group because they, in a way, act similarly to his organization. They also often use humans among their ranks to demoralize the enemy when these humans are killed. It's a fun way to do it, but if they have no real purpose, they must disappear from the map. The last thing he wanted was to be attacked by an organization like that. It would be extremely unpleasant to be targeted by them because it would delay his plans. However, he knew perfectly well that they would somehow always become involved. There were indeed records of them moving after what happened with the tubes where the V organization was completely destroyed. Only that? Thank you for telling me, it's truly helpful. Kenzo stopped smiling easily and merely cast evaluating looks among those present. No one else spoke, they didn't want to raise suspicions, especially Kenzo's curiosity. If I may add, it is rumored that they have a large number of members scattered between districts 3 and 4, respectively. The clown organization is a group of hedonistic ghouls with no known goal or purpose. Their members mainly use clown-themed masks and declare their intention to have the last word. A rather arrogant motto as Kenzo thinks correctly, and after considering it, he concluded that the clowns were also a serious issue that needed to be resolved as soon as possible. They don't usually appear very frequently, but when they do, they are very organized, showing a unique execution will. It's very curious, I just learned that they entered District 20 without authorization, so I was wondering if they were somehow related to the V organization. It would be nice to meet one of them. I wonder what I'll decide at the end of the conversation and if it's worth sparing them. Kenzo's words squeezed the hearts of everyone present. They had witnessed how he easily eliminated over a dozen well-trained ghouls, so they knew he was a powerful ghoul, likely classified as SS or even SSS. Furthermore, some of them had been present during the incident in the tunnels and trembled slightly at the memory. Mr. Kenzo, how are you so sure that the clowns entered District 20? Idari wanted to confirm that with a question, feigning intentions of exposing something absurd. Well, everything that happens in District 20 goes through my eyes. A ghoul can't take a breath in District 20 without us allowing it. So it was obvious that we would notice when a group of clowns entered our territory without requesting permission to operate within. Hoito Roma frowned upon realizing that the conversation was deteriorating. If things continued this way, there was no chance Kenzo wouldn't notice that Idari was lying. It seems that the rumors in District 20 were wrong after all, Idari said, sounding a bit surprised. But indeed, you already knew. You know what I'm thinking, that someone very special from the clowns used the V organization masterfully. How can something like that be achieved while belonging to another organization? Kenzo frowned as he thought about this, and he looked at Idari with much more coldness. I wonder if he originally belongs to the V organization and joins other factions only to gain personal benefits or information. Kenzo appeared quite relaxed, but the others shivered unconsciously when they realized that. You have a somewhat aggressive imagination. Are you suggesting that these two organizations are involved just because they participated in the same incident and then mention that perhaps both were organized by the same person? Idari shivered a bit as she looked intently at Kenzo. Well, if you know something about them and can ask them who that person is, I'd like to know because I must eliminate them. Kenzo stood up after saying that. But his words left Idari in silence. It was estimated that only Kenzo dared to utter those words because he would be going against two major organizations at once. Not even the Aogiri tree can state those words with certainty. In reality, it's okay to tell you, my purpose is very simple. I just want to crush the V organization, and I believe I've found a target that will lead me to that. Kenzo resolved the question in the minds of the people present. However, his words once again surprised everyone. Exterminating the V organization. Now that's a desire too grand to be considered small. It can even be said that the V organization is a god that determines the fate of this country. One more thing, I can assume that both you, Idari, and Mr. Yuta won't cause me any problems, so I hope you'll ensure that the girl at the back keeps her mouth shut. I've memorized your faces, and I wouldn't like to come looking for you over some nonsense. Kenzo lit a cigarette as he stood in the middle of the bar. Haha, always making interesting jokes. Yuta raised his glass and nodded at Kenzo, who gave him a calm look. Am I joking? Kenzo glanced at Idari for a few seconds and shook his head. I've said what I needed to. Thank you for your hospitality. The alcohol here is really strong. Then you're welcome anytime. Idari said with a smile on her face. Kenzo didn't speak further, he just turned around and seemed to want to leave. But at that moment, his figure stopped again at the door and then looked closely at Idari. For a while, the surroundings suddenly tensed up. The air seemed to grow much colder, and the smell of blood became more piercing. Mr. Kenzo, is there something else? Idari asked with a cold sweat breaking on her forehead. Kenzo didn't speak, his expression seemed to waver, and he finally shook his head, turned around, and left. After watching Kenzo leave, everyone felt relieved. It's scary. Why did he stop at the door a moment ago? His eyes are so frightening. Idari expressed her persistent fears as she patted her chest. He was hesitating a moment ago. Yuta said as he swirled his wine glass. Hesitating about what? Idari asked in confusion. I could feel he was hesitating a moment ago. Whether to kill us or not, Yuta explained this as he raised his gaze and looked at Idari. No way. After hearing Yuta's words, Idari felt a chill that filled her with terror. She hadn't realized this. Yuta is not lying. That man's killing intent was quite thick. In fact, he already knew you were lying, but he decided to make a bet because he believes you might be a crucial link to the clown's organization. Hoito Roma said this with a firm expression. District 14 will be embroiled in chaos. We must move and uncover the truth of all this. Chapter 35, Obstacles. That's not possible. We had a good conversation a moment ago. Why would he consider killing us? After hearing what Yuta said, Idari was momentarily stunned and scared at the same time. She hadn't realized. In most situations she had faced in her life, she had never suffered so much due to her beauty. It might sound a bit conceited on her part, but she didn't believe Kenzo capable of uprooting such a beautiful flower as herself. But for Kenzo, that doesn't matter. For him, it is not impossible to uproot a beautiful garden to achieve his goals. Maybe it's a trap he set for us, and it'll make sense later. It's better if we move the way he wants us to, or it's most likely we'll die. I know him, I've worked with him, and I can tell you that I've made more than 5,000 ghoul masks for him. Can you imagine the members of the organization he belongs to? Yuta's words were not laden with concern, he was just trying to make his acquaintances realize the importance and danger of dealing with someone like Kenzo. But it's curious that now the son of Kyuzan Yoshimura is seeking information about the organization V. After all, his father was a former member who separated from that organization due to unknown events. That's why they have privileged information. What exactly is Kenzo looking for in the organization V? His intentions are clear, as he came to District 14, which means he probably plans to expand like an unstoppable virus. Kenzo intends to extend his influence to the point of becoming a complete ghoul king, and for the first time, a dictatorship might emerge in the depths of the night. Whether that is good or bad, only time will tell, as well as whether Kenzo will manage to do it before being stopped. Walking through the darkness of the night, Kenzo had decided not to kill them because he knew Yuta, who is very dear to Tuka. As he walked, he contemplated whether his choices had been correct and whether he had made any mistakes. While he walked, he saw a cat emerging from a dark alley and said, "Unlike you, perhaps all of us might have a chance, don't you think? When that happens, I'll give you a chance too, little cat." Kenzo now had plenty of time, but aside from District 14, he needed to thoroughly investigate District 19 and find out who was leading there. When he thought about it, among the districts he hadn't visited and had zero information on were Districts 1 to 4. It's possible that the organization V was hiding there. But that's a little absurd, isn't it? It's known that those districts are the heart of the CCG. So, if they manage to infiltrate their surveillance network, it means they are strong and smart enough to blend among humans without being discovered. Considering that, things might become a bit challenging. After all, there would be many other things he should do before reaching those districts. At that moment, while pondering over many things, Kenzo's figure disappeared in a blink to a special area of District 14. From what he had heard, the organization 12 Monkeys operated in this district. Not everyone is as sophisticated as he or any other organization, so things shouldn't be hard to trace. This time, Kenzo moved to a place where he would verify the information given to him by those who sought refuge in his organization. In the eastern area, there is an abandoned building. This desolate place, where brutal murders occur daily, belonged to an extremely brutal group of ghouls. Although this organization cannot be considered troublesome in District 14, they are indeed a thorn in the side that needs to be cleaned up. At that moment, in the empty hell of the building, a middle-aged man covered in tattoos was celebrating. When the hunt in District 14 is over, and the food is readily available, they come to celebrate. The door opened, and a group of ghouls entered the building. It's been a while since I tasted the eyes of a beautiful human woman. It seems she was on her way to District 20 to live in that supposed safe place. If we enter that place, it won't be safe anymore, will it? A man with some tattoos tore a limb from the female corpse on the floor and began to bite the flesh, but after a while, he left the limb. Eating only one corpse per month is extremely boring. You've heard it, haven't you? They say that anyone who enters District 20 never comes back alive. Everyone says a group of lunatics guarding the safety of humans moves around that place. A figure with a type of trash bag over their head whispered. Damn, if it weren't for those idiots who didn't want us to look, I wouldn't have stayed in this ghostly place forever. By the way, what the hell are you doing here, Sato? The one who seemed to be the group leader asked the man whose head was wrapped in a black bag. I just came in because it's cold outside. I'll go out to keep watch once I've warmed up in here. Sato said casually as he approached the bonfire. If they are as powerful as they claim to be, why aren't they willing to take control of District 14? After some time, a figure in the darkness asked in a tired tone. Sato stared at the flames in the bonfire and frowned, his gaze turned to the leader and said, in the end, we will be consumed by the 12 Monkeys group. What else is there to do? It's fine, isn't it? After all, good things may await us if we join them, and we could even set foot in another place. Hey, Sato, saying those words lightly, if someone else is listening, could get us into serious trouble. You know perfectly well that the old monkey won't leave us alone for a while if he finds out about it. One of those in the distance looked at Sato and reprimanded him. The old monkey again. It's that old monkey who came out of who knows where. Someone snorted with coldness. I'm sick of it. Are we going to let a bastard like him take absolute control? However, just at that moment, a bloody mist began to seep inside the building, and just as it began to be noticed, something was heard. Boom! In a short time, a loud noise was heard at the entrance of the building. Hey! Do we have guests? The dismemberer named Kenneth, who was the leader, smiled ominously. However, Sato felt a little uneasy when he heard the noise outside. Ah! A scream sounded, and Seo's heart shivered. Since this scream felt so familiar to her, it meant that the captain guarding the hard entrance had been defeated. Don't make noise. Run and alert. A group of ghouls entered where Kenneth, Sato, and the other ghouls were. As a result, right after they left, a dark figure appeared behind them. Bang! 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 The figure in black behind, with a crow mask, launched several crimson projectiles into the backs of some ghouls who were running. Ah! Amidst the screams, the thick bloody mist spread, and blood droplets flew around the invading ghoul. What is that? In an instant, a ghoul being held by that figure exploded into a blood mist, and this happened in a matter of seconds. How did he do that? Seeing this scene, Kenneth's eyes went mad, and he glared angrily at that figure. This guy killed them all. Sato also felt pressured by this massacre. It seems that the information was incorrect. In reality, there's a group of rogue ghouls hidden in this place. Kenzo looked at Kenneth and Sato, assessing them behind his crow mask. I'm going to kill you. In an instant, Sato moved towards Kenzo with clear intentions of tearing him apart. But what no one expected was that a massacre would begin inside that building. Chapter 36, Energetic Tear. Crack! A Kagun in the form of a thin tail emerged behind Sato and struck directly at Kenzo. The red mist blocked both vision and hearing. The sound conductivity within the bloody mist emanating from Kenzo's body significantly reduced sound conductivity, making Sota, who was highly attuned to his hearing, feel extremely uncomfortable. Perhaps this is also an innate ability of Kenzo's Kagun? Having two Kaguns that can be used separately and in a perfect way allowed Kenzo to have two identities, and of course, when he consumed that ghoul at a young age, he acquired a blood mutation that allowed him to control it in a remarkable way, enabling him to execute different attacks. True evolution is about control, growth, and sensations. Too slow. Kenzo's current figure did not require either of those Kaguns to deal with this enemy, so he simply used his speed. This method of movement was subtle, relying primarily on the enemy's trajectory to maximize his initial speed. Not long ago, Kenzo had dealt with most of the ghouls in this group on the outskirts, so he knew with certainty the remaining numbers. The hunt had begun. Perhaps subjecting himself to these sensations at night was a true and beautiful challenge that allowed him to tap into his slightly dulled abilities. He no longer hunted as he once did, after all, his organization took care of all the problems for him, but it was good to spend time doing this. Is it just a need for training? Does he enjoy hunting his enemies? No, these people were not his enemies, they were simply a bag of troubles. A nuisance that acted like a magnet for CCG agents. Crack. After Kenzo dodged Sato's initial attack, his figure, which had disappeared, reappeared right behind his initial target as if he were merely playing, and his gaze subtly assessed this ghoul's Kagun, which seemed only slightly stronger than the others. This. Sato's heart clenched when he saw Kenzo by his side not making any movements. Ugh. But Sato, who saw Kenzo in a fixed position, suddenly got scared, because he had vanished from his field of vision, and at that very moment, he felt something holding him by the head. Kenzo, having seen what he wanted, suddenly changed position and held Sato's head by the chin, throwing him to the ground. The blow was harsh, targeting a vital point with sheer brute force. Sato's jaw was nearly dislocated, and he flew face down with a muffled groan. Crack! Afterward, Kenzo extended his hand, grabbed Sola's Kagun, and threw it into the group of ghouls that were about to move in his direction. Boom! Boom! Kenzo's outstretched hand condensed 2 water droplets and shot them at Sota, who was rapidly retreating. Boom! A stream of blood splattered on the ground, and in less than 5 seconds, Sota had been defeated. I'll show you! Kenzo manifested his Kagun on his back, and in less than a minute, a huge crimson wing suddenly appeared, halting everyone who was about to move in his direction. Boom! With a rush of air, Sota and the other ghouls were forcefully pushed back. What? What is this guy's origin? Kenneth was paralyzed, not long after witnessing Sota, an S-class ghoul, being defeated in such a humiliating manner. Cough. Cough. A ghoul who had been attacked with the blood droplets had severe holes in his body, causing him to cough up blood violently. As a result, the vitality in his eyes continued to dissipate, and he had entered a near-death state. This is terrifying. Only now did the senses of all the ghouls regain sobriety, and they looked around in bewilderment. At this moment, it wasn't just Sota, the problem was so significant that more than half of their members had been crushed by a single ghoul. Whatever their intentions, who protected them, or who their brethren were, Kenzo didn't care. Even though his intentions here had concluded, he would like to handle a few issues on his own before returning, as he often found good routes to sustain himself in the future. In other words, he wanted to know if anyone in this district who was not affiliated with an organization was worth being trained by him. Sato and Kenneth were known to belong to a group of reckless ghouls who, even though they hunted only once a month, did so with brutality, drawing the attention of the CCG, from which everyone wanted to remain hidden. Will you just stand there motionless? I originally didn't kill that man because I was quite curious. What will you do next? Kenzo approached a figure on the ground. Heh. Kenneth simply laughed and didn't respond to Kenzo's words. Hey, you're laughing, but you're paralyzed. Did you hear what I'm asking you? Kenzo took a step forward and stepped on the head of the ghoul struggling to move. Ugh. Kenneth snorted but continued to remain silent because he knew that, no matter what, one of the two sides would die. One of you is dressed in black, and the other is dressed in white. Are you pretending to be conspicuous? Kenzo looked at Kenneth coldly and then shifted his gaze to the ghoul he was standing on. Kill me. The ghoul spoke at this moment. I didn't hear that, let him live. He simply did what he had to do to survive. Sota crawled on the ground and looked at Kenzo with an emotionless gaze. Oh, really? Unexpectedly, Kenzo forcefully pressed the ghoul's head under his foot, and blood, along with bits of brain, splattered all around. What a damn mess. Kenneth, who witnessed this scene up close, had a lump in his throat and had stopped breathing when he saw one of his subordinates killed in such a manner. He was more terrified than anything. Sota, who witnessed it, only felt pity. But that's how the world worked, you fight to survive and risk being killed by someone else. Killing such a strong person with bare hands, dressed in black, with a powerful Kagun, the individual in front of them was incredibly powerful. You said I shouldn't kill them, why do you believe that? Kenzo looked directly at Sota on the ground. Some of them belong to another group of ghouls, so if you kill them, even if we manage to kill you, we'd have to run due to suspicions from that group that died in suspicious circumstances. Sota's words were convincing. Okay, I understand. So, what is a group doing stationed between districts 19 and 14? Kenzo asked, looking directly into Kenneth's eyes. I'm afraid that's a secret, Kenneth said without any intention of saying a word. But at that moment, just behind his back, several kaguns pierced his chest. Crack! Crack! Only the final blow was needed to end his life, but that would be left to time. Oh! Kenzo felt a bit surprised. Betrayal of this magnitude is not simple, so he asked, is he one of those not from your organization? Not at all, my lord. He would only get us killed, Sato replied to Kenzo, his body covered in blood. Oh, is it really just that? Kenzo smiled when he saw Kenneth kneeling directly. Sato and everyone present had no chance of defeating someone like Kenzo, so this was the only way to survive. It's no wonder that even with great strength, they couldn't be leaders of District 14, after all, there were beings as powerful as the one in front of them. The survivors in this room would be delighted to survive, my lord. Would you grant us that grace? Sato was clever, so he immediately put aside all his desires to live in a submissive attitude. Kenzo looked at this ghoul who immediately understood the situation, so he said, do you understand the consequences of playing with my precious time? Stand up and let me look at you. Chapter 37, A Clever Man. When Sato heard those words, he breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that the fate of his neck had been temporarily saved. Although he didn't know the true purpose of this madman coming to kill them, Sato believed there was much more to it than what he initially saw. If that were the case, then it would be easy to be of assistance, as this would be his only opportunity to have an easy life. Being a servant to a powerful ghoul was never a shame. Sato had also heard about the mysterious incidents in District 20. A regular person might think that the tranquility in the district they lived in was thanks to the CCG or just luck, but ghouls knew that something strange was happening in that area. Take me to that place you mentioned. I want to know which group is keeping an eye on you, but I hope you're not playing games with me. Do you understand? Kenzo said at this moment after giving it some thought. I wouldn't dare. Sato didn't dare to refuse at all. Then lead the way. In an underground area of District 14. Here, there was an abandoned factory that connected to the underground area where they were. At the same time, many ghouls could be seen in various places, caged like dogs. What are those dogs wasting their time on? I clearly told Kenneth not to feed them so much. If they become stronger, it's a problem I'll have to deal with personally, a man with sunglasses said in the middle of the night, very dissatisfied. They haven't revealed themselves, have they? I remember it wasn't easy to keep that fool Sato in line. He's very treacherous and will side with the stronger ghoul. If someone suddenly appears stronger than Kenneth, that fool and everyone following him won't hesitate to betray us. You need to take care of that immediately, said a tall and robust man. I have the same plan, but we can't do it until the doctor issues an authorization order. We still need his help in District 14, but lately, he hasn't contacted us. Whispered the man with sunglasses. The man who was speaking was one of the higher UPS who controlled this hidden place. They were not under the jurisdiction of the 12 monkeys and rarely showed themselves. Therefore, their desires to control a place they didn't care about were few. But unlike what Sato told Kenzo, ghouls are captured here for experiments. Dr. Kanu needed ghouls, but his jurisdiction wasn't so vast, so in this place, another doctor should be sent, one just as bad as Kanu, if not worse. In that sense, it would be interesting to find out what they were doing in this place. In Kenzo's ideal world, all ghouls should be united like a single organism. Treating each other in this manner was just another sign of destruction, and it needed to be resolved and taken advantage of these helpless souls. If all ghouls act like this, all they'll achieve is their own destruction. They should be disciplined in this case. I think Kenneth can handle it quite easily. Those dogs aren't strong enough to beat him, and they're not smart enough to attack him all at once, said a ghoul with a tattoo on his face. Oh! Are you an idiot? This is District 14, they can kill you even while you're sleeping. Now that Ken is the leader of this operation, he needs to show a firmer hand, don't you understand? A tall man who wanted his leader to be much more violent and intimidating scolded everyone around. All right, just because we're ghouls doesn't mean we have to act like rabid dogs, said a calm-looking man. Ken remained silent, feeling somewhat defenseless. The two people in front of him, one called Black Shadow and the other known as the Mountain, were elite SS-class ghouls and special members of Organization V. No one knows what Organization V is seeking, but what they have been doing in this place is a mystery to others. At that moment, a distant scream was heard. Crack! Ken was taken aback at that moment. Who in District 14 dares to come here and cause trouble? What happened? The ghoul called the mountain heard screams in the distance and felt confused. Ken, that damned Sato has brought someone to attack us. A ghoul informed Ken, who was the leader of this operation. I understand. Everyone, get ready. That idiot Sato, I always knew he would betray us like this. Now, regardless of whether the doctor has issued a purge order or not, I will take care of that guy. The face of the mountain darkened as he said these words. Wait a moment, mountain. Black Shadow said desperately. The group hasn't returned, Kenneth hasn't made contact either. Should we assume he was killed, so he must be stronger than usual? Black Shadow was an intelligent man, and he said these words while trying to find an explanation. What do you mean? Do you think he's dead? Ken was surprised for the first time. It's possible. Black Shadow nodded. How is that possible? Kenneth is classified as an SS ghoul. Well, now we must assume that the enemy is just as strong or that he was taken by surprise. What a piece of garbage. Now we need to resolve this as soon as possible and move to another location, the mountain said as he looked towards the source of the sounds. Boom. At that moment, the door of the abandoned factory was thrown open. In front, two figures walked very slowly, Soda and Kenzo. You two, long time no see. Soda said with a sinister smile as soon as he entered. Oh. Is it just you two? The mountain looked at Kenzo, who was a complete stranger, and Soda, who was walking in a strange manner. However, he felt increasing fear when he looked at Kenzo, who was surveying his surroundings with a smile. Soda, what did you do with Kenneth? Black Shadow asked at this moment. Oh, those idiots went completely crazy. Soda replied, unwilling to tell the truth. You reckless fool. The sinister foreboding of Black Shadow deepened, and his eyes turned toward Kenzo at this moment, but his pupils shrank when he sensed the strong scent of blood within Kenzo's body. It seems you're curious, so I'll be brief. Kenneth was killed by me, and considering the nature of this place, you'll be joining him very soon. Kenzo didn't hold back, and there was no reason to. May I know who you are? Don't get me wrong, we don't usually have these problems as we don't interfere with anyone. Ken took a step forward and asked. Is that important? You've been harming our own kind when we should be united. Do you think I need a reason to care for my people? Kenzo wasn't a hero, but considering the overall situation, if he took immediate control here, he would have a foothold when he fully seized District 14. Naturally, we'll overlook this if you leave here, we don't want trouble. Ken could sense that Kenzo was strong, so the smartest thing he could do was take a step back and surrender. Chapter 38, A Rigid Bullet. Seeing this unexpected scene, Kenzo lowered his head and, after a while, said, Oh. This isn't about what I want to do, my objectives and goals are engraved within me, so I can't ignore what's happening in this place. Do you understand when I tell you that you are causing a serious problem? Ken looked at the mountain, who was ready to fight, and said in a cold tone, You'll suffer a beating even if you beat us. Do you still want to continue? I'll take care of the prisoners here, so I'll consider your words. That's a shame. Ken shook his head and gestured to Black Shadow and the mountain to take charge. In no time, both ghouls covered their bodies with armor that provided layers of protection. At that moment, the mountain moved and charged toward Kenzo's left side, while at the same time, Black Shadow kicked forcefully, targeting the head of his enemy. Crack! Kenzo raised his left hand, which ended up broken due to the strong impact. However, it didn't take long for Kenzo to move with the same brutality as his enemy. But before he could recover, the mountain, with his armored body, hit Kenzo's body as if he were a rhinoceros. The impact was strong, and even Kenzo, who was testing the enemy's tactics, was a bit surprised. To be wounded in this manner, ghouls must be extremely skilled in battles. It had been a long time since he had been injured in this way in a battle. He still remembered when he was a child and got hurt due to the size difference. Back then, his healing factor began to improve to the point where it was far superior to the average, and now he was smiling. As he was being physically attacked, a big smile appeared on Kenzo's face, and he thought, these ones are decent. Ken frowned when he saw Kenzo laughing despite receiving severe injuries that would make even the strongest man grimace. But no matter, his two men would take care of eliminating this invading ghoul. Ha ha ha. Kenzo, with several broken bones, began to heal them and, in one swift motion, punched the mountain in the chest with his right hand. Crack! Ah! The mountain was sent flying with a piercing cry of pain. His entire chest caved in as he spat out blood, feeling as if a truck had hit him head-on. Are you in this state just from receiving such a simple punch? I thought you could withstand a half-ton blow. Kenzo's right hand had been covered by his kagun. That enormous arm was different from the rest of his body because his kagun was extremely special. Don't get too excited. Black Shadow's figure appeared over Kenzo, and his kagun appeared as a long rinkaku with spikes that tore through his enemy's flesh as they drew closer. The purpose of attacking in this way was precisely that, to tear Kenzo's muscles and give the mountain time to heal. That blow he suffered was very sudden, strong, and completely out of the ordinary. He had never seen so much damage caused by a single punch before. At that moment, his eyes made contact with their leader, Ken. He wanted to tell him that their chances of winning were slim, but there was no time to be distracted by that. He knew that if there were sudden problems, Ken would know what to do to solve them. Although the mountain did not belong to the CCG, Black Shadow and Ken did. They had provided personnel to complete the mission in District 20, but after several days, no one returned, which made it very suspicious. Furthermore, with fewer chances of winning, the only option was to flee and report what had happened to the central base to take more drastic measures against this enemy. At that moment, a buzzing sound was heard at high speed, and as if time had stopped, Kenzo's eyes gleamed intensely as he moved toward Ken, who was in the distance. 2 seconds were more than enough to pierce his stomach with one of the protruding bones of his kagun, destroying his internal organs and sending him straight to the ground. The hearts of all the ghouls who were watching the impressive battle trembled with fear at the sight of Ken being pierced by the enemy without warning. When your subordinates are fighting, as a leader, you should focus on the enemy and not hide in the back. You're embarrassing. Kenzo turned his head slightly and saw the mountain, who was standing, his entire body reinforced with armor. There was only one way to obtain that armor, and it was by being a cannibal, eating one's own kind to become stronger. Something very easy to acquire but difficult to master. Black Shadow had underestimated Kenzo a moment ago. Although he had done his best to stop him, he remained motionless after the mistake he had just made. We have to kill them, Mountain. The two figures headed toward Kenzo, who had thrown Ken's body away as if it were trash. Then, with his kagun fully formed in his right arm, he struck his enemy with great force. Boom! The Mountain, who received the direct blow, felt as if the whole world had trembled. His eye sockets bled, the armor on his body shattered, and his large body exploded into a mist of blood before flying away. Crack! Kenzo simply raised his left hand to protect his head, and as a result, Black Shadow inflicted significant damage to his body. At the same time, he revealed his other Yukaku-style kagun and split his enemy's arms in two. 2 kaguns. Black Shadow, upon seeing this scene, roared. His eyes narrowed, and the lower part of his kagun began to twist and immediately struck Kenzo's ankle. But this time, Kenzo wouldn't let himself be injured so easily. He began to dodge the enemy more seriously, carefully assessing the trajectories of the blows, avoiding total damage. This was a battle of endurance and strength. It was undeniable that Kenzo had the upper hand, given his ability to easily heal and continue fighting, unlike his enemies. This time, clashing head-on and ignoring any damage he might receive, Kenzo managed to connect a direct punch to his enemy. Boom! Bones fractured, blood sprayed around, and Kenzo's target received a direct blow that completely crushed his head, sending his body flying through the air and crashing into a wall. Boom! The Mountain got up once more, but it was evident that he was on the verge of collapse. Some of his bones had suffered extensive damage, and he could do nothing but walk toward his comrade, Black Shadow. Get up, we still have work to do. At that moment, upon seeing Black Shadow's lifeless body, the Mountain fell to his knees. Kenzo easily healed the last wounds on his body. These enemies, although strong, lacked close combat experience, so the battle had been decided from the beginning. Sato, you damn servants, what are you standing there like idiots for? Kill him! The Mountain ordered before collapsing to the ground. I'm sorry, I'm not your subordinate, and I have no obligation to help you. Sato looked at the unconscious Mountain and expressed his doubts. Kenzo, who saw this, simply extended his hand, and a drop of blood pierced the Mountain's heart, killing him while he was unconscious. With a mere wave of his hand, numerous drops of blood condensed and pierced Ken's corpse as well. That's it. It's a shame my enemies always end up dead. Chapter 39, Point of Exposure. Kenzo didn't expect much from those he faced. It was more of a suffocating feeling of loneliness on his path to ascension. But it was necessary, he needed this strength to fulfill the objectives he sought. As he looked at the corpses of these 3 unknown individuals, his gaze centered on Sato, who stood still among what were supposedly his oppressors. As for the prisoners, they were freed and began massacring all the ghouls who had held them captive. Despite there being over 40 ghouls, there were more than 300 prisoners who ravaged everything that moved without hesitation. When they saw Kenzo's back, they felt in sync with a purpose. They were tired of living this way. Of course, they envied humans when asked. They all wanted to live among the dead and eat human flesh to survive. What does chocolate taste like? What is that beautiful food called cake? Everything tasted like dirt or vomit to them, so they didn't even know what humans enjoyed. They were considered the enemy. Who had the right to call them enemies of humanity? It was their nature. Nobody chose this path, and they all walked through a world of uncertainty. They were angry at humans. They didn't choose to help them, quite the opposite, they hunted them down as if they were a pest. Hypocrites, all humans were hypocrites. They said they respected the food chain when watching documentaries about creatures being devoured and hunted, but they criticized when they were the ones being hunted. They accepted hunting animals but panicked when they were hunted. Lack of morals or criteria. No, lack of unity. Kenzo murmured when he saw all the ghouls tearing through their enemies like rabid dogs. They leaped from one side to another, like warriors of the night. In fact, they were a superior species to humans, as Dr. Kanu once said. Kenzo walked at this moment through the battlefield. No one who fought so seriously could see him, not a single attack was directed at him. At the same time, his hand moved with precision to save some reckless ghoul on the brink of death at the hands of those who controlled this place. His hand moved like a snake, seeking the throats of his enemies. This sensation was what he had been searching for a long time. The smell of blood, earth, desperate cries, and those who sought nothing more than liberation from their chains. Alone, they might not be able to defeat humans, but together, they formed an unstoppable army that a country like Japan wouldn't want to face. If they did, the entire country would descend into chaos. Kenzo's attacks were simply beautiful, precise, and aggressive, taking a life at regular intervals. Now that he thought about it, it would be good to have a weapon, something like a quinqua from the ghoul investigators walking the streets. Yes, now that he remembered, he had some taken from those investigators in District 20. What kind of weapon would he have after this? When everyone finished eliminating the guards around and tore their bodies apart, they soon noticed Kenzo's figure walking slowly with a big smile on his lips. They remembered him, this man had set them free, so from now on, they would follow him, no matter what. Fantastic ending, Kenzo said as he took a step and instantly appeared at the other end, where there was nothing but a large enclosed square. These places had been reconstructed, you could say, to create underground fights, something interesting to have legally. In total, from what Kenzo had seen, there were over 350 ghouls, including the group that had come with him. Now, it was time for Sato to choose. My lord, you have kept your word, I will give my life into your hands. I have only one request, let my subordinates go, Sato said as he knelt on the ground in front of Kenzo. Upon hearing this, a chained man also knelt on the ground and said, My lord, I was the one in charge of this place before. I'm not extraordinary, but if I can be of use, my name is Kirin. Kenzo, who heard these words, smiled, looked at Kirin, and said, Do you think I am a cruel person? Not at all, my lord. You are a man destined for great things, and an evil person would not have come this far, Kirin replied with total honesty. If you take us as your subordinates, we promise to give you District 14 after we eliminate the 12 monkeys. All the authority in this place will be in your hands. Sato raised his head and looked Kenzo in the eyes as if trying to convey his sincerity. Kenzo felt all those eyes on him, and with no major concern, he lit a cigarette. After eliminating some of his future problems, he was no longer worried about the lives of these ghouls. But now, he had changed his mind. Both of you are Class S ghouls. If you devour a Class S ghoul, you could possibly ascend to SS by inheriting their Kagun. I wonder if you can do it. Are you that useful? Kenzo asked while looking at Sato and Kirin, who stood at the front of everyone. We can. The idea of cannibalism wasn't far-fetched, especially if they had the opportunity to inherit a powerful Kagun like the ones before them. As they made their choices, both began to devour their respective Kagun, and the sounds of swallowing were heard all around. What do you feel? Kenzo's question awakened everyone from their silent state. He then asked them again, what comes next from now on? When I realized that we were being hunted like stray dogs, I decided to become strong. I achieved it much faster than I thought, so I set out to create a strong family. We are strong, but there are still many things I must consider and, of course, acquire. Walking in front of everyone, Kenzo, who was not a very social man, shared some profound words. The life of a ghoul is a perpetual struggle, a shadowy existence in which we are hunted to the ends of the earth. From the moment we first open our eyes, our existence becomes a constant battle for survival. We are hunted, pursued as prey in a world that rejects us. Humanity fears us, hates us, and considers us monsters. But let's remember this, a ghoul without a plan is just a dog wandering in a world without possibilities. Living in the shadows, feeding on human flesh, without a real purpose. This is not life, it is mere survival, an existence devoid of meaning and honor. Today, I offer you an opportunity. An opportunity to belong to something, to be part of something that will change the world. It is time for ghouls to unite, rise, and claim their place in society. If we do not do it ourselves, no one else will. Humanity will not accept us willingly, that is a fact. But we do not need their acceptance. We need their respect. Imagine a world where ghouls do not have to hide, where we can live openly without fear of being hunted. A world where we can coexist with humans in peace and harmony. This is the world we can create if we unite, if we leave behind individual struggles and become a unified force. I do not promise you that the path will be easy, nor that we will not face obstacles to achieve it. But I promise you that together, as a single unified front, we have the power to change the course of history. Let us not allow our destinies to be marked by persecution and despair. Let us take control of our lives and forge a future in which ghouls are respected and feared in equal measure. The choice is yours. You can join us, join this cause that will change the fate of ghouls, or you can continue to be pursued and live in the shadows. But remember, the opportunity is on the table, and it is up to each of you to decide if you are willing to fight for a better future. Together, we can change the world and ensure that ghouls have a respectable place in it. Who is with me? Not everyone was willing to accept humans, which is a matter of personal criteria and various issues. But miraculously, everyone decided to stay. We will follow you. I am tired of hiding. Then, my dear crows, I will lead you through the darkness to obtain the light. My name is the Crow Master, Kenzo said as everyone kneeled, giving him authority over their lives. Chapter 40, The Crows Enter. How do you take full control of District 14? That is very simple. For everything, there is a way water flows, and the easiest thing to achieve is to take control of a dark world when everyone is focused on the ghouls. On top of a building, Kenzo, dressed in a simple outfit, dialed a number and said, "Tonight will be it. Clean up all of District 14, except that bar, and don't touch the friends who have a relationship with us." Understood, Master. Kenzo smoked a cigarette to alleviate the itching sensations in his body because if, for some reason, they drew the CCG's attention, they would face humans much sooner than expected, and that was not a priority for him. First, let's subdue the ghouls. In the heart of the tumultuous District 14, a dark organization known as the Three-Eyed Crow was about to write a new chapter in its quest for power and supremacy. This group, led by the enigmatic Kenzo, had outlined a meticulous plan to take absolute control of the district, and they would spare no effort to achieve it. Kenzo knew that the first step in his ambitious strategy was to establish contacts with the criminal underworld operating in District 14. Their targets included gangs, drug dealers, the feared Yakuza, and others with nefarious intentions. They infiltrated stealthily, gathering crucial information and studying the operations that generated income for these individuals. Once they had obtained this data, they simply eradicated all members of these groups in one fell swoop. Because they were ghouls, even their corpses disappeared without a trace in a single night. Understanding the enemy was a fundamental aspect of the Three-Eyed Crow organization's strategy. They had studied their targets to perfection and determined which of them could be coerced and which would resist. Groups that refused to submit were ruthlessly eliminated, and their businesses were passed on to the organization in seemingly legitimate transactions that were, of course, facilitated with money. A hefty sum of laundered money was simply something impossible to refuse for any lawyer, prosecutor, or judge. Anyone could die at the hands of a ghoul tomorrow. Who would care about something like this when even some detectives accepted money for information? Who pays for the new car and the mortgage on the house? Obviously, with their tiring jobs, no one can generate extra money, so with just a few $1,000s, they were secretly working for the organization without many problems. Even if they were ghouls, a crucial part of the plan involved acquiring legal businesses without arousing suspicions from unbribed authorities. Intermediaries and frontmen were the key to concealing the true ownership of these businesses. In this way, the organization gained an apparently legitimate presence in the district in just a few days while continuing its operations in secrecy without any interruptions. And although very few dare to go out at night for the moment, there are still customers who have lost all fear of being devoured by ghouls and go out to have fun once a week. As was well known, District 14 was a refuge for ghouls who hid and hunted in the darkness. The organization was determined to take control of them and persuade them to join their ranks. Ghouls who refused to accept the offer were eliminated without mercy, while those who accepted became part of the Three-Eyed Crow. Of course, the 12 Monkeys organization knew that something was happening, but they didn't know exactly what. Some of their members disappeared without a trace, and their leader did absolutely nothing to prevent it. In a few days, the meeting would take place. What was the leader of the 12 Monkeys thinking to continue without major problems with the meeting? Nobody understood, but the message Kenzo sent was quite clear, and he knew they would eventually gather, so he didn't fear it. As long as they didn't touch the areas of the 12 Monkeys group, which was actually quite small, everything would be fine, and it wouldn't attract anyone's attention. However, Kenzo didn't know why this would pique the curiosity of someone curious enough to investigate. But those concerns were unfounded, so he quickly moved on to the final plan before exterminating the 12 Monkeys group. New members, both humans and ghouls alike, underwent rigorous training that taught them to control their abilities and operate in the shadows without being detected. As they grew stronger, some were selected to join the organization's main groups, while others received specific instructions according to their abilities. "How many members have we lost?" Kenzo asked as he drank a cup of coffee and looked out at the vast landscape from the edifice he was in. Viper, who was behind him, said, "We lost 12 ghouls, but we managed to establish a chain of control in districts 4, 13, and 15. They have noticed the changes, so rumors about a new king in this district will begin to spread." Kenzo actually expected this, which is why he decided to exponentially increase the members of his organization to take control of an entirely new district and ensure that everything remained as quiet as possible, even if problems arose. What about the 12 Monkeys? They are a problem, but everyone seems to understand that they are in a desperate situation, so they haven't made any conspicuous moves. As the meeting is tomorrow, we will decide their fate according to the plan, Viper replied with an indifferent look. Killing them wouldn't be a good idea. Do you think a battle would solve this problem? Kenzo asked with some doubts. After all, he wasn't an exceptionally intelligent being. Viper thought about it and said, "It's better to eliminate the top leaders of the organization and take their power absolutely. We will be opening bases in the city, so there won't be any problem taking control." "Then let's do that." The organization knew that patience and discretion were their allies in a world where shadows concealed secrets, and survival was at stake. Over time, District 14 would transform into a stronghold of the Three-Eyed Crow, ready to achieve its ambitious goals in the dark world of ghouls and humans. But it wouldn't be so simple from now on because Kenzo had bitten off more than he could chew. After all, this wasn't District 20. Chapter 41, The New King of District 14? 3 days later. District 14. Except in the areas controlled by the 12 Monkeys group, everything was under Kenzo's control, making him a very important figure in District 14. Kenzo sat at Idari's bar, but this time, no one else was there except them. After a few minutes, Sato entered and sat next to his boss. After controlling the Class S Kagun he had devoured with Kenzo's help, he had risen directly to the SS rank. As something new, Idari prepared many cocktails for his tasting and placed them in front of him. Kirin had also reached the SS rank and became the 12th pillar of the organization, becoming a captain of the 12th Search and Elimination Division. Kenzo, District 14 has been suppressed to the area near the 12 Monkeys territory, as we were informed. We haven't made any moves against them, but the situation is getting tenser. Sato lowered his voice so that no one else could hear. The bar, which had previously been destroyed, had been repaired, so there were only a few people brought by Sato, claiming that Kenzo should have a ghoul guard to prevent him from making moves too easily. But Idari had very keen ears. She had overheard all of this, so she related it to the information she had obtained and discovered that Kenzo belonged to the organization that had forcefully entered the district. If no one is foolish, they should have sent someone to investigate the Three-Eyed Crow organization and discover that it is not a simple place. They didn't create ghouls, they had soldiers under their ranks who didn't need their Kagun to be extremely deadly. The first time she heard about the Three-Eyed Crow organization was when they made a deal with Kyuzan Yashimura to stay in District 20 and act freely according to the district's principles. Things improved, demonstrating the real value not only of their word but also of their goals. Over time, rumors spread that any other ghoul who arrived in the district would not be able to leave that place unscathed, let alone reappear. But somehow, the rumors that they accepted refugees and fed any ghoul who asked for help earned them the nickname Farmers. Because no matter how many ghouls lived in District 20, there was always food, which was simply astounding to those tempted by those rumors. You have to keep our areas completely ghoul-free. Our business needs a safe place to operate. No one can enter District 14 without us knowing. Kenzo lightly tapped the table with his index finger. Understood, we have been on high alert since we started dominating the areas where our people work, Sato responded respectfully. Idari was surprised when she heard this. If what they are saying is true, hunting in this district would now be impossible for them. I had heard some useful information, and those rumors said that Sato, along with a man named Kirin, were Class SS ghouls. So if that's true, taking control of this district would be too easy for them because together, there would be no one to stand in their way. In normal circumstances, everyone would be alarmed, but District 14 has not always been under a strong organization for a long time. So nothing changes for them because they will continue to hunt. No one can stop a ghoul from eating and surviving. Of course, Kenzo didn't care about what others thought. He needed to keep this district discreet from the CCG, and unless complete dominance had been established, they shouldn't be disturbed. In District 14, no one truly knows what is happening in the darkness, and that's fine. Because of this, Kenzo has a lot of room to continue expanding his territory. There was something that was bothering Kenzo at the moment, but he didn't know exactly what. Miss Idari, are you interested in becoming a part of the Crows? Kenzo took a cocktail and subtly posed a question to Idari. When Idari heard the words, she displayed an ironic smile. Can she refuse? The moment Kenzo asked her that question directly, all the ghouls around her looked at her simultaneously, as if they would somehow act immediately if she refused. Miss Idari, since our captain has asked a question, it would be polite to answer as soon as possible. Sato stared at Idari and nodded slightly. He and all the others who knew Kenzo's identity as the Crow Master had been ordered to keep the secret until District 14 was completely under control, which is why they addressed him differently. Kenzo's identity varied. There was one as an important member of the organization and as the Crow Master, the man everyone admired. Sato, please, Miss Idari might mistake us for a fifth-rate organization, Sato murmured with a slight smile. I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean any harm, Sato quickly said while lowering his head. It was just an observation, don't apologize. Idari remained silent. She knew perfectly well that District 14 would eventually become a part of the organization to which Kenzo belonged. In a short time, they had completely taken over District 14, and in the past few days, cases of cannibalism had significantly decreased as a result. I know you're a member of another organization, but what I want to tell you is that, in the end, everyone will have to succumb to the Crows. Looking to the future is believing in a new present. I won't ask you for anything, I'll simply offer you a nightclub at your disposal, and if you seek more, you'll have to prove your worth. Mr. Kenzo, I deeply appreciate your invitation, so I will accept being part of the Crows. Idari sighed and said this after a few seconds of hesitation. Now she knows that if she refuses, she's definitely destined to die. Welcome to being a part of the Crows. Kenzo raised his glass and, with a calm look, congratulated her for being at least intelligent. In his eyes, she has many other qualities that he could trust later, so all of this would be known in due course. Kenzo's ambitions are extremely vast, something that was not unmatched for anyone who knew him. Who would say that his desires are to destroy the V organization and unify all the districts? So, after some thought, it might be better to establish a new division that specializes in the intelligence network and thus solve many problems. All the Crows were now moving, so it was impossible for them not to attract attention and grow exponentially. There's one thing I need you to do for me, Kenzo directed a direct look at Idari. Mr. Kenzo, please go on. Idari leaned in and listened carefully to his words. It's not that big of a deal. I need Miss Idari to help me investigate the V organization. Once I grant your club and a professional group at your disposal, you'll begin your work. I expect the best from you, miss. Chapter 42, Before Destiny. The next morning, Kenzo woke up in the hotel suite he had recently acquired in District 14, and it was truly a marvel. Not many want to do business in the most dangerous districts, so if there's a buyer, it's best for them to sell because they've been losing money on taxes. This is a wonder for Kenzo because it allows him to acquire numerous properties at a low cost, and these properties would increase in value once the area becomes much safer. At the same time, numerous crematories were being purchased, and new workers were being placed in cemeteries to maintain control along with appearances. Kenzo walked into the room and looked at a completely black suitcase that had been sent from District 20. Crow Master. Viper inclined respectfully. Including the preparation time, this is our latest and most special weapon made for you. As you requested, Division 0, which will fight with Quinquas against Ghoul investigators, is in training. In addition to that, this is the most special one we could get for you. Kenzo walked to the black suitcase and asked, what class is it? You asked us for something based on your attributes, so there are two functions in the suitcase. The first can be used by you with your current identity, and as for the second, you prefer to use it as the Crow Master, Viper replied with a calm voice. As for the class, this is a Yukaku class Quinqua, a sword-like organism that feeds on any kind of flesh. In its first form, it can be wielded and naturally attacks your enemies. In its second form, it shoots a red beam that is extremely dangerous due to the high voltage it can exert. However, its charge is limited, so you can only make 10 attacks at a time. Upon hearing the explanation of this Quinqua, Kenzo imagined that it was a quite powerful ghoul, but unfortunately, it was unstable. Not all the ghouls they come across are willing to join their organization, others are recruited from abroad, and many more haven't even made themselves known. It's a very good choice. You should pick one for yourself and not rely entirely on your physical strength if it's not necessary. We should always be in the best condition, so starting a battle with this special weapon is more appealing than exposing our Kaguns. Kenzo looked at the suitcase and pressed the button. Crack! In just a few seconds, a long, wing-like appendage with various sharp spikes appeared in the case. Along the length of this weapon, various types of spikes could be seen, as if it were a picker, and its meter and a little more were the perfect distance Kenzo had been looking for. Crow Master, despite having many Quinquas we've stolen over the years, relying on a weapon is not always a good idea. Moreover, many are uncomfortable with the creation of Division 0 because it reminds them of the doves. But they are not the doves, they wear black suits and are completely ghouls. What's the problem with that? Now that you mention it, it's not a significant problem. In fact, it's certainly an advantage for us to have the same weapons as humans. In simulations, if a human with Quinqua and a ghoul fight without prior experience, the ghoul is at a disadvantage. However, with experience, the human has the advantage in most cases. Nevertheless, it reverses when fighting on equal terms. Kenzo smiled upon hearing this and said, of course, we would have the advantage, even in a one-on-one showdown, ghouls have the upper hand due to their superior physical abilities. Ghouls were strong, but many lacked combat experience. This gave humans the edge to leverage their numbers and technological advantages, but now that could be reversed with ghouls' superhuman abilities. Tonight, we will meet with the 12 monkeys. The attack group will wait, and Division 0, which is here, will enter with me. How many do we have in this district? Kenzo asked while storing his Quinqua, which he decided to name Lyox. We only have 6 combat-capable ghouls, all of them are super lethal, so they will take care of their hideout that night. Viper mentioned this and added, by the way, if all goes well, taking this district will be much easier than we thought. Don't shout it out loud, something tells me it won't be that easy. Kenzo muttered as he dressed in a formal black suit. Today would be the grand opening of his club in this district, so due to that, drinks would be 70% off. Online advertisements have been running for days, so they probably have good guests. Rumors of a decrease in ghoul attacks have slowly encouraged more and more humans to venture out. Of course, this also caught the attention of the CCG, who intended to maintain tight control over District 14, and this opening definitely alarmed them. They should be concerned as security, so they would be nearby to provide safety for the people. Chapter 43, Night Club. After waiting for a long time on some things he needed to check, Kenzo headed to the main bank in this district. Hello, miss. I have money being transferred to me from Canada, and I want to know if the transfers have gone through. Kenzo, with his indifferent expression and giving the impression of being tired, looked at the woman in front of him and tried to be as polite as possible. "Please wait a moment," the teller looked at the screen in front of her in disbelief, and her hands began to tremble. "Are you Kenzo Yoshimura? Isn't that name written on my ID?" Kenzo asked in confusion, thinking that this girl was probably new to this job, so he decided not to pay her much attention. "I told you to keep our activities in the same bank. Making moves like this in another bank account is too much trouble," Viper reminded Kenzo while scanning the surroundings. "This bank offered me good guarantees, I suppose that's what led me to choose it. Besides, they have their branch here, so it's good to know." Kenzo touched his chest and remembered that he hadn't talked much with Tuka, so while he was here, he had to make sure his appointment wouldn't be missed. "So many things, Viper. Knowing that you usually sleep in late and lately don't attend the meetings, you've certainly been up to a lot lately. Why do you want me to attend those meetings when you can handle them? I trust your instincts, you're like a second boss for everyone." Viper didn't know why he felt manipulated, but he said nothing and kept waiting for the teller to return. "Will they call the police or something?" "That's absurd, they pay their taxes, so these issues were covered with their foreign export company. As for what they were exporting, it was drugs, of course. The underground factories were the best, and having those facilities made it perfect for an efficient production of a legal product." After some time, the teller returned with a middle-aged, burly man. After glancing at the screen and Kenzo, he was surprised. "Are you the one who called a few days ago?" "I probably did, they told me that no other bank would offer me better deals than this one, so I'm testing these funds." Kenzo sighed with some impatience. The sum of money he transferred came from ghost companies located abroad, so this was a hassle. "Because the fund is quite large, we'll need some time to verify the information. Can you wait for a moment? I have nothing important later, but I would appreciate it if you could hurry. My time is money. I chose this bank as a small test to determine its benefits compared to others," Kenzo said with a subtle smile. The bank manager immediately invited Kenzo to a VIP room. Surely, even Kenzo didn't know that his photo had been processed by the police due to the recent scandal in the CCG. Although that case wasn't prosecuted, information about him was sought because they wanted to find out more about him and keep track of any reports mentioning him. "Is this man trustworthy?" the bank manager asked the teller. "Based on our data, he has a good track record with Japan's largest banks. His transactions are international, and he has multiple treaties based on loans and interest. He is 22 years old, dropped out of school at an early age after inheriting his grandfather's monopoly. Check and request consultations." "Yes, manager." In the end, the transfer was completed. The bank manager and the teller handed Kenzo his bank book and card with the utmost respect. Once Kenzo left the bank, a car immediately picked him up and took him to the nightclub to check the things that were missing before its opening. "Welcome, boss." The exterior guards, who were humans, greeted Kenzo immediately when they saw him. In this business, there were always two groups of security guards, the ones outside who dealt with humans and the ghouls who handled issues inside. The atmosphere was pleasant, and the women who would work as waitresses at night had gathered to hear a few words from their boss. Furthermore, some other security guards looked at Kenzo with interest. This young boss was incredibly imposing, and he didn't seem like he was really 22 years old. With his large muscles, he gave the impression of being a tough guy. "My words will be simple, so listen carefully." Kenzo smiled slightly and looked at everyone with much more delicacy. "You are my workers, which makes you valuable people in my establishment. You will be my family from now on. If any of the customers cross the line with you, just report it to a security guard, and they will take care of it. I'll take good care of you, so I want you to feel comfortable." "Yes, boss." Kenzo ran a first-class business, more like a corporation than a simple criminal organization. This kind of approach had opened many doors for him to slowly control the streets and become a distributor in a highly significant business. It could be said that Kenzo's network was now deeply rooted and slowly expanding to other districts. His family was off limits, that's what all ghouls needed to know. Chapter 44, The Night of the Crow. In the heart of the mysterious District 14, a special night was in full swing. Despite the sightings and precautionary warnings that had circulated among the residents, a nightclub had attracted a determined crowd eager to enjoy the night. The moon, a faint glow in the dark sky, cast a dim light over the place, while music and bustle filled the surroundings. The club's facade was illuminated by colorful neon lights that blinked and flickered, creating a surreal atmosphere. Meanwhile, security guards ensured everything flowed smoothly. Everyone is going crazy. I wish I didn't have the night shift so I could attend that club, it looks like a good place, a detective remarked, gazing at the enormous line outside the club and the people leaving the venue quite drunk. I don't think it's a good idea to drink at night. You know how dangerous District 14 is to expose yourself that way to the ghouls. His partner didn't seem to share the same idea. It's good that new places like these are opening up. If the population demands it, the CCG will send more investigators. It's not possible. All those idiots are taking care of Districts 1 to 4, which don't actually need it, just under the excuse that their central bases are there. Everything is going as expected. We have capacity for 600 people, as the firefighters indicated, but it's filling up, and more people are still arriving. The logistics chief approached Kenzo with a report on the situation. Have the women go with the VIPs and make sure they keep ordering drinks. If they don't want to keep drinking, find a way to get them out so that more people who want something from us can come in. Kenzo had been there since the club opened, and the booming music was incredibly delightful for this kind of environment. The main event is about to begin. Will you stay to watch it? Kenzo stood up and said, I told you I'd be out for a few hours. I'll be back when I finish what I have pending. Remember to maintain order and don't show favoritism to any type of customer. Understood, boss. When Kenzo heard a positive response, he walked down the hallway and entered a private room, which was actually an inaccessible corridor for regular customers. In the hallway, there were a dozen figures wearing crow masks, each of them holding a silver briefcase. One of them, in particular, handed Kenzo a black briefcase. He had put on black gloves, opened his greatcoat, and donned the crow mask, not forgetting to pull the hood over his head. Clean, fast, and without letting anyone escape, Kenzo's cold words roused everyone from their stupor, and they nodded as they followed him. As they all descended the stairs of the hallway into what was a basement, a passage had just formed due to the dust everywhere. But Kenzo didn't care about it, as it fit perfectly, and as long as he could move, everything was in perfect condition. Tonight would be the night when the crows took charge of the monkeys in District 14. On the outskirts of the urban area, there were abandoned factories that had recently been purchased by Kenzo with a large loan and minimal interest. He knew perfectly well that once he had control of the district, the structures abandoned due to massive ghoul appearances would become very valuable, something he needed to take advantage of in advance. These plans had been made for a long time, but they hadn't moved from District 20 until recently, so all the logistics were based on theories and speculations that had been developed over the days. A convoy of several cars was heading to that area without fear, as if nothing in this life concerned them. The ghouls from the 12 Monkeys organization had been waiting for them, so when they saw the approaching cars, one of them stepped forward to stop them. The ghoul on guard walked up to the front vehicle's window and gently tapped it. What do you have in the briefcase? The ghoul raised an eyebrow as he shone a flashlight inside the vehicle. It's a gift for the old monkey. Is that something you should consider? Kenzo, from inside, responded amiably to the ghoul. How many of you are there? I didn't count, sorry. Upon hearing each of the hooded man's responses, the ghoul wanted to ask another question, but the driver stopped him and said, Hey, friend, are you trying to cause us trouble? Remember that your boss is waiting for us, and we don't like to keep people waiting. My lord shares these words with you. I've been ordered to escort you all to the entrance, but only 10 of you will go in. The rest will have to wait outside. Come on, it's not the right time. Kenzo was patient for the moment. He knew that his enemy might be looking for a weakness, so he needed to be patient at least until he had his real enemy in front of him. Yes, Crow Master. They had arrived at the secret base of the mysterious organization known as the 12 Monkeys. The place was guarded with extreme care, and every corner was filled with alert guards trained to protect the dark secrets it held. The broken windows and rusty doors had been reinforced with wooden planks and heavy padlocks to keep unwanted intruders at bay. The constant hum of generators and security systems filled the air, creating a palpable sense of tension. As Kenzo's group disembarked, they all wore crow masks, and each of them carried a mysterious briefcase that made many people nervous because they believed it was a well-known enemy. However, after they smelled that they were all ghouls, they became less alert. The Crow Master is here. Chapter 45, A Night Darker Than Usual. As all the ghouls sensed Kenzo's presence, the only thing they could feel was a deep fear stirring deep within their souls. They live like criminals, what a damn shame. Kenzo's words left everyone wondering what he meant, but they obviously couldn't express their doubts since they were just simple guards there to show the strength of the 12 Monkeys organization. Over here, Crow Master. A beautiful woman approached Kenzo and extended her hand toward the main path without daring to look him in the eyes. Both organizations had communicated beforehand, something Kenzo had wanted to avoid unnecessary confrontations and drawing the attention of the CCG, which would have caused a lot of problems for whoever won. On the way, only 6 people followed Kenzo, while the others remained outside. None of them understood why, but they knew these ghouls were extremely powerful based on the way they walked and the confidence in their every move. A ghoul predator, one who controlled his Kagun better than any other and who was obsessed with battles. That was the description of Kenzo in his early months as a ghoul, and his name and brutality had reached the ears of many. After advancing through an endless corridor, they arrived at a door where there was a functioning elevator. They all went up, and Kenzo closed his eyes to sense the surroundings. There were no traps or signs of an ambush, so that was good. An incredible place, but living in trenches is not a lifestyle I respect much. If only they would form an organization, they must know there are better ways to integrate with society, Kenzo thought as he surveyed his surroundings. When the elevator doors finally opened, they entered a vast open space inside the factory where the machines had been removed. In their place, there was a central arena where 2 ghouls were currently engaged in a fierce battle for life or death. When the old monkey, a tall, muscular man, spotted Kenzo approaching, he stood up and said, "On this particularly dark night, you are very warmly dressed, Mr. Crow. Do you not trust my hospitality?" Kenzo was a bit surprised by this man's attitude. He walked toward him and sat directly in a large armchair. His hand moved slightly as he said, "Very curious, I thought you would try to attack me right after seeing me. You've surprised me, I still don't trust you enough, but you can call me Crow, as everyone else does. I'm Noah. My saintly mother was European, and she gave me that name, which is my ghoul alias. What are we doing here exactly, Mr. Crow?" Noah asked, giving Kenzo a somewhat curious look. "I suppose I should inform you. First, I must apologize for taking a district that originally should have belonged to you, Mr. Noah." Kenzo said these words as if they weren't that relevant to him, but he also wanted to find out if this man in front of him was temperamental or not. "Well, you're wise to do so. We were all very confused by those ghouls with crow masks. They are demons." Noah acted as if he were frightened while taking a sip from his glass. Kenzo took a lighter from his coat and said, "In life, we all have dreams. I suppose I have a very big one, and that's why I'm going to take District 14 under my control." "This was a sudden decision, Mr. Noah. I've been debating which district to take for the last 7 years, and finally, by fate's hand, I settled on your district. I must also assume that you won't stop with just districts 14 and 20, will you?" Noah asked in a much more serious tone. He was having a conversation with him now because the crow's attitude toward the monkeys had been very delicate, as if they were somehow avoiding a direct confrontation. This was not due to fear, Noah was quick to realize upon seeing the leader of the organization entering his domain. He wasn't upset, he was intelligent and understood perfectly well that risking his life for an area he could take elsewhere was much safer than dying in a face-off with an unknown adversary. "You're absolutely right. My desire is to unify all districts, one by one, and through dictatorship, carve out a place for ourselves in this country." Kenzo felt that the man in front of him understood him perfectly. "Do you think you will gain a foothold in this world with that? It's quite absurd. Do you think humans will want that?" At this point, Noah scoffed at Kenzo, as he understood humans better than anyone, and the man's idea was garbage in his eyes. "What makes you think they wouldn't accept it? They fear us, they fear weapons, drugs, and terrorism. Have you ever thought about what they would do if they were attacked through those means?" Kenzo asked as he reclined in the chair, then continued, "But I'm not seeking their blessing for my plan, Mr. Noah. I want to unite District 14 and 20 in strength immediately. However, there's one problem, and that's you, Mr. Noah. What do you want from me? That you make a decision right now. Let me tell you one thing, I don't like to unnecessarily kill potential allies. I'm not bloodthirsty, I prefer to win through constructive ideas. So, in a few words, will you yield to the crows or die being devoured by them?" The question left Noah silent, and once again, there was no reaction on his face. To him, Kenzo's words were cold and direct, as they should be. He understood the man's unwavering intentions perfectly. "I'm not one to risk my life for things that aren't worth it, Mr. Crow. Do you think you can win? To what extent are you willing to sacrifice to achieve what you want? Noah asked as he stood up. His question required a clear and sincere response, or he would tear off that mask himself. When Noah, the old monkey, stood up, all the ghouls in the vicinity fell silent and looked toward the top leadership. They were aware of what was happening, so it depended on Noah's choice. My life. I won't enjoy life unless it's on the same terms as humans. I will make ghouls have rights, I will go all the way and achieve it. Only then will I consider having a child and living the rest of my life with the woman I care about. I won't make the same mistake as my old man, so I'll need your answer as well, Kenzo said as he also stood up. Tension filled the air, and everyone felt as if a battle would erupt at any moment. But before that could happen, a loud explosion was heard in the distance, and a voice echoed. This is the Metropolitan Police. You are surrounded by CCG agents, and you have a chance to come out unharmed if you surrender. Chapter 46, What's happening? It seems like you are telling the truth. Kenzo looked at Noah and said, I never lie, Mr. Noah. Then I'll be in your care, Mr. Crow. Along with the words of the old monkey Noah, an explosion was heard outside, and the announcement of the police along with the CCG echoed outside. Sir, the CCG has located this location. What are your orders? Asked one of Kenzo's guards with all the calm in the world. Clean up the place and tell everyone to retreat. Also, make sure all ghouls leave with them. We'll meet in 2 minutes right at this spot. Yes, Master Crow. Kenzo walked to the balcony just in front of the area where the fight was taking place, looked at Noah, and said, Old monkey, if you pledge allegiance to me, I can save them all and provide protection. You've drawn a lot of attention from the outside, and this is what happens when you're not discreet, intelligent, and sensible. Do you believe in my words? Noah looked at Kenzo, and after a few minutes, nodded. I'll trust you, now District 14 belongs to you. Then follow my guards, they will lead you through a special route right to a safe haven. After leaving the radar, you will be sent to District 20 and, respectively, to District 14. Just follow orders, and you'll be fine. Kenzo, who said these words, jumped toward the central area. What's happening to you? I'll give them enough time to escape, it's not time to face the CCG yet, so escape with everyone else. Remember, Noah, you've made the best decision of your life. Kenzo stopped looking at the old monkey and instead walked forward, right to the door where the ghouls were running. Seeing this outcome, Noah clenched his teeth and finally shouted, Follow me, I have a way to go. Follow the crows, and we'll all get out of here. Outside, the ghouls of the 12 Monkeys organization pulled out firearms and positioned themselves in strategic areas to begin their defense while the others escaped. This is madness, how do those idiot humans dare to launch an attack against us? We have to kill them all. The ghouls of the Three-Eyed Crow organization immediately walked towards the black vehicles they had traveled in, took out gasoline canisters, began to spray the vehicles, and then set them on fire. Evidence erased, in a few hours, they should report the vehicles as lost and remove all ghouls from the nightclub for a possible investigation. Let's go back. The captain, a Class S ghoul, looked outside calmly. Sir, the captain informs us that he will take care of this, so we must take the ghouls from this place to a safe area. It seems that negotiations have gone much better than expected, we must return as soon as possible. This CCG attack doesn't seem planned, we didn't receive any confidential information, so it seems that something is not right. Do you think this is about us? A ghoul looked seriously at the captain. No, we haven't raised suspicions due to the cleanliness of our crimes. Maybe this is about the 12 monkeys, but we don't know anything for sure. For now, let's get out of here, said Kenzo's guard captain, pointing to the ghouls who were panicking. Listen, everyone, get out of here and follow the crows, our master will take care of buying us time. A voice snapped all the ghouls out of their thoughts, they had all believed they would fight to the death in this place. Let's go, follow them, or die for nothing in this place, said Kenzo's guard captain as he entered the abandoned factory. We have to follow them. You go, we'll give them more time. As expected, some didn't want to leave, they wanted to buy time for those who could still survive. Without thinking twice, they began firing at the humans. Bang! 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 The hail of bullets fell on the armored cars outside, and due to the unexpectedly large-scale attack, several humans were riddled under the relentless gunfire. The smell of gunpowder began to rise in the surroundings, and those who decided to stay soon faced attacks from the police and tactical teams. Boom! Just a few minutes after the confrontation erupted, a series of tear gas bombs fell on the ghouls, making it difficult for them to see, and some even stopped shooting. "You damn bastards!" A ghoul stood up and jumped from a great height, his kagun glowed under the smoke, preparing to attack the CCG agents who should be aware. Boom! When an explosion was heard, several CCG agents with their quinquas entered the area, and immediately many were attacked by ghouls from all directions. Many died, but those who were prepared launched an immediate counterattack, causing a direct battle that stalled for a while. But at that moment, a white figure flashed, and appearing behind the ghouls, with a single movement of his kagun, all his enemies were cut in half. "The Reaper of the CCG." Those were the last words the ghoul uttered before losing his life under a demon among humans. "Where is that ghoul?" murmured the question from the white-haired man named Arima Kisho. His investigative skills and combat prowess have earned admiration from many investigators, like Kotaro Aman. However, there are many who are displeased with him for his many achievements within the CCG, which is quite rare. Recently, multiple ghoul murders were reported in a chaotic manner. When information was sought, a ghoul with a crow mask was captured, and it was soon discovered to be a powerful ghoul who had been missing for 7 years. What was he doing in the last 10 years, and why did he appear just now? Arima, who was in District 14 to eliminate the 12 Monkeys organization, had known about the existence of this ghoul for a long time, so he was intrigued to find out how strong it was and what drove it to be as calm as it had shown in recent years. Now, as they were about to make a somewhat unprepared raid on this place, Arima discovered that several cars were entering the abandoned factory, so they immediately suspected it was an unidentified group of ghouls. "Mr. Arima, all ghouls are escaping. We need to hurry, start with the main elimination." Arima then disappeared at a great speed and entered the factory, eliminating several ghouls in his path. But at that moment, he felt something approaching rapidly in his direction, so he dodged. Boom! However, because there was an investigator not far behind him, they were hit by that thing, which turned out to be a drop of blood, and the investigator's chest exploded as if it were a bomb. "Did you manage to dodge that?" A sinister voice was heard ahead, and when Arima entered, he saw a figure completely dressed in black, wearing leather gloves and a robe with a hood, in addition to a very old mask. "You are not the target," Arima murmured, walking slowly toward where Kenzo was. Chapter 47, This is not the end. The man who had entered was dangerous, mostly known as the Reaper of the CCG, and Kenzo knew this perfectly well because he had studied this potential powerful enemy. Arima is a tall man with white hair, grey eyes and pale skin. He is always seen with his glasses on, his face maintaining an apathetic expression, rarely showing any emotion. "Let's start with something calm." Kenzo raised his right hand and, forming a drop of blood, shot it towards Arima, who was advancing at a considerable speed. Boom! "Did you manage to dodge that?" Seeing that his target moved with precision to the side, Kenzo was very surprised. "You are not the target," Arima murmured, walking slowly toward where Kenzo was. At that moment, he clearly saw the black briefcase in the hand of that figure and stopped at a considerable distance. "The Reaper of the CCG, rumors say that he has never encountered a ghoul who can stand against him. Do you truly believe in a world without ghouls?" Kenzo posed this strange question that momentarily confused Arima. "I too seek a special world, Mr. Arima, one where all of us can live in peace. Of course, I could do little for the world, but at least I will seek a place in this country where we can be valued. Do you think I am too ambitious?" Kenzo, finishing these words, pressed the button on his briefcase, and a long sword with various spikes appeared in his right hand. A mist of blood, in turn, began to form very slowly around Kenzo, giving him a terrifying appearance. In an instant, he moved toward his target, causing Arima to aim his quinqua and release golden rays. Boom! But Kenzo wasn't as slow as he had pretended to be, and in a burst of speed, he appeared at Arima's side like a ghost. The sword in his hand swung forcefully, the first attack aimed for his enemy's chest without much technique. In a situation like this, there was no need to generate a spectacular fencing display because most battles would be won through brute force. Unless humans gained strength through unknown means, none could match a ghoul that is vastly superior to any human. A living organism that is not perfect, ghouls were on the verge of being evolved humans if it weren't for their weaknesses, only being able to consume human flesh. Boom! Arima openly received Kenzo's attack, causing his body to be thrown backward at an extremely aggressive speed. Abnormal strength. Kenzo thought as he aimed his quinqua and shot several blood projectiles at Arima. Boom! 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 In this battle, Kenzo was not seeking to eliminate Arima, he was using the presence of this powerful enemy to test his quinqua and understand how strong the Reaper of the CCG is, as everyone who has faced him has lost. The strength he had demonstrated was by no means human, none could endure the impact he had launched with most of his strength and simply stepped back for a brief moment before resuming the battle. Who exactly was Arima? The question lingering in Kenzo's mind couldn't be answered because at that moment, a quite large golden beam headed towards his direction. It was launched directly by the quinqua that Arima held. When the dust settled, the clothing on Arima's body was torn, and slight cuts appeared due to the impacts Kenzo had launched. I wonder how and where you obtained that quinqua. Are ghouls now so intelligent as to use human weapons instead of relying on their kagun? Arima asked as he adjusted his glasses. You are indeed surprised. You've been slightly injured because you haven't adapted to the fighting style I'm forcing you to take on. Ghoul technology comes from you humans. Isn't it incredible that we can also use your own weapons against you? Kenzo shook off the dust from his body and said, before choosing to have a quinqua, I analyzed a fight between a human with a knife and a ferocious beast like a huge dog. What is the result if both face each other with intentions to kill? The answer to the question was the human. Despite the dog having a strong bite and being stronger than the human, it lost miserably. That made me think that many ghouls are rabid dogs that don't know how to behave, waiting to be killed by humans with knives made from our own kaguns. But at that point, I asked myself a new question: if ghouls are stronger than normal beasts, what would happen if we have our own quinquas as the first method of combat before resorting to our kagun? Kenzo knew that he didn't need to be intelligent to have the chances of reversing quinqua technology, it was enough to have various tools to know how they are made. If he could create a division of 500 ghouls with their own quinquas, what would conventional ghoul investigators do? They would be crushed, demolished, erased from the face of the earth. You are dangerous, intelligent, and very dangerous. Arima moved quickly towards where Kenzo was and attacked with an agile movement. Boom! The impact was strong, causing dust to rise in the surroundings and making Kenzo step back a bit. In truth, this man was dangerous. If he had attacked with normal methods, he might have had certain problems, so it was a good idea that their first encounter was this way. It seems it's time. Kenzo held his quinqua in his left hand, and his eyes slowly changed color to a bloody red. In an instant, his right arm swelled, and a monstrous kagun in the form of an arm emerged, granting him monstrous strength. I would love to continue facing you, Mr. Arima, but this is not an ideal place for either of us to die. Kenzo lowered his gaze and, with a deep breath, struck the ground. Boom! The ton-weighted blow, combined with his special bloody energy, caused the surroundings to shake, and numerous cracks appeared in the ground. Arima, truth be told, was intrigued by Kenzo, so he stopped. Following him would result in nothing. Moreover, Kenzo's speed was superior. Chapter 48, A Smart Strategy. An organization or a company. Green code activated. Kenzo's organization has established a strict security protocol in case there are indications that any activity or member of the organization is possibly related to ghouls. This protocol has been implemented to minimize risk and protect the organization's interests. In the nightclub and in the areas near where the problem occurred, several messages with the number 606 appeared. This number signified the green code that should be executed. Everyone start hiding in shelters and trusted areas. At the moment there are indications that a company related to Kenzo's organization is compromised by reports from the CCG or evidence accrediting suspicious involvement. An immediate evacuation of any ghoul involved will take place. This includes employees, collaborators, or any individual who may be related to the slightest detail of the incident. The goal is to prevent ghouls from further compromising the security and anonymity of the organization. With this, Kenzo not only protects his monopoly but also takes special care of each and every one of his workers. Something extremely special that must be done without any mistakes. In this case, 3 vehicles were compromised that no one expected to lose during that nocturnal visit to the 12 Monkeys organization, so something had to be done about it. If it is discovered that vehicles owned by the organization or used by its members have been found in compromised scenes or associated with ghoul activities, a detailed report of the situation must be presented. The owners of the vehicles will be identified, and their possible involvement in activities linked to ghouls will be investigated to clear them. In this case, ghouls are replaced by human workers in the company report, and this immediately goes into the hands of the police, who will report the vehicles as missing a few hours later. Therefore, if it is discovered that organization employees have been present in compromised areas or related to ghouls, a thorough cleaning of security cameras in those locations will be carried out. This will ensure that there are no visual records that could compromise the identity of the organization's employees or its operations. In addition to this, security cameras will also be cleaned, and the dates on which all company cameras are cleared of data will be updated in the protocol. This, in the face of a possible investigation, will not raise suspicions. At the same time, employee records will be moved to a hidden folder of well-protected data. To minimize the risk of being suspicious and protect the identity of organization members, a temporary replacement of personnel by individuals not related to ghouls will be carried out. This includes the relocation of employees and collaborators to other areas or companies to avoid possible reprisals or involvement in suspicious activities. In exceptional cases where the organization's security is at risk, the temporary relocation of the organization or its visible operations will be considered. This will be done to avoid becoming a target of investigations or reprisals by authorities or other organizations. Security cameras have been wiped. All information about Ghoul employees has been concealed. Clean zone. Viper walked into the recently closed communication room in District 14 and said, "Remember very well, this security protocol will be implemented rigorously in case there are any indications or suspicions of a connection with ghouls. The priority is to protect the organization's interests and maintain the safety and anonymity of its members at all times." "Yes, sir." "What about the safe houses?" "Sir, it's reported that they have received more than 500 ghouls, all guided by the Crow Master's Guard. Cars have been sent to evacuate them, and District 20 is prepared to receive and classify them in one of the main bases." Viper frowned. This was certainly risky, so he said, "Have the 5 pillars present themselves and eliminate anyone who is suspicious." "Understood, sir." "Are you asleep?" "Tuka, not yet." "When are you coming back?" "Tomorrow, I can't forget my appointment." "Do you think I've forgotten?" "That day is special, I'll answer all your questions, so think about all of them." Kenzo looked at his phone as he returned to one of the main bases still under construction in District 14, which happened to be a coffee factory. The workers here were people who had been given a second chance, a much better paying job with good conditions for the workers. Many in Japan needed a breath of not so suffocating tranquility. They required understandable superiors and a work schedule that facilitated their daily lives as well as their commitments. Those were the jobs that Kenzo offered to his workers. By giving them all of that, he received loyalty, gratitude, and their silence in return. "Wasn't the costume party fun too?" a worker asked, looking at Kenzo, who had recently introduced himself as their boss. "It turned out to be samurai-themed, and no one accepted that a crow entered through their door, so they kicked me out," Kenzo replied disappointingly while waving his hands. "We could have a costume party with a deer theme, where all your workers would be crows, and you could wear that costume." The worker spoke a bit with Kenzo before checking the coffee beans that had arrived tonight. Kenzo didn't mind being seen. What ghoul in their right mind would do something like what he had done? His workers would take this as a coincidence, and if not, it would be just something curious. To dispel their doubts, he might participate in a lunch. The simplicity of his condition was that he could be between suspicion and cover-up. "I'll have to return to District 20. Kenzo muttered as he took off his robe. Chapter 49, A Dinner. After redirecting a few things, Kenzo returned to District 20. This time, he had traded his casual clothes for something more elegant, not quite a suit, but it looked very different from other days. Once dressed, he left his hotel and took a vehicle to pick up Tuka. When she got out of the vehicle, she didn't see anyone familiar in the cafe, so she deduced that there weren't many customers aside from the regulars. A while later, she came out with a subtle smile hidden on her face. Tuka looked elegant and captivating in an outfit that reflected her unique style. She wore a black dress that gave her a seductive and sophisticated air. The dress had a simple yet flattering cut that highlighted her slender and graceful figure. Additionally, Tuka's dress had long, fitted sleeves that subtly widened towards the cuffs, adding a touch of romance to her appearance. The top of the dress featured a moderate V-neck that delicately revealed her collarbone, providing a hint of discreet sensuality. To complete her outfit, Tuka wore black stiletto heels that lengthened her legs and added an extra touch of elegance. Her short hair was loose and shimmered slightly in the light of the calls, with some loose strands framing her face, and her eyes revealed a gleam of excitement and a touch of eyeliner that enhanced her gaze. Tuka complemented her attire with a pair of simple earrings, adding a touch of subtle sparkle. You look beautiful. Are you curious about the place we're going? Kenzo asked as he opened the door for Tuka. I'll trust you. You said this is a special occasion, so I dressed like never before, Tuka said with a flirty smile as she got into the car. Minutes later, they arrived at a luxury restaurant exclusively opened by Kenzo for ghouls and high-profile individuals. Reservations to dine at this place were extremely exclusive, and the amount of money required to eat here was significant. Tuka drew the attention of people inside because everyone who entered this place was a person of high class and purchasing power. Are you sure we'll have dinner at this place? Tuka asked, slightly nervous. She didn't know if they would eat here or just watch. After all, she was a complete ghoul, and human food wasn't something she could handle. Don't worry, today you'll try something completely new. Kenzo led Tuka inside, guided by the staff who immediately recognized him. They entered a private room that showcased the beautiful exterior of the place. It was 9 o'clock at night, a perfect time for a romantic dinner. As usual, the restaurant called Blood of the Valkyrie, named in honor of those who shed blood to get what they want, located on one of the busiest and best-viewed streets in the city, was filled with high-class customers. The restaurant was bustling, the aroma of food filled every corner of the place, waiters hurried to take orders, and the food handlers were delivering meals. The restaurant had 3 relatively large floors, each of these areas had a different class than the others. The first floor catered to customers with reservations who were not so distinguished in society. On the other hand, the second floor served customers with reservations, and the quality of the food was much superior compared to the first floor. Finally, the third floor was where the luxury rooms were located, and getting one of them was quite difficult because it was exclusive to ghouls. At this moment, in a private room on the third floor next to a window, Tuka and Kenzo sat across from each other. They remained silent for some time before Kenzo decided to break the silence. Weren't you going to ask me a lot of questions? Tuka was about to speak when a waiter entered with a bottle of wine and poured it into beautiful crystal glasses for them. Then, he subtly bowed and left without saying a word. I had told you that the organization I belong to works on research to make ghoul food more nutritious and much more diverse. Kenzo took a sip after saying these words, his naturally bored expression showing a unique charm that he only expressed when he was close to Tuka and with no one else around. Really? Tuka showed a surprised expression. I never lie. The soft candlelight created a warm and romantic atmosphere in the restaurant. The couple, one half human and ghoul while Tuka was a complete ghoul, knew they couldn't enjoy conventional human food, but that night promised to be different. Amid their lively conversation, a waiter approached the table with an elegant demeanor and a silver cart carrying 4 carefully decorated dishes. Each of them consisted of exquisitely prepared raw meat. These dishes were famous throughout the ghoul world for their exceptional taste and quality. The waiter presented the dishes with an elegant gesture, revealing the meticulous culinary work that had brought them to their final form. Each dish was adorned with fresh herbs, edible flowers, and impeccable presentation. With a friendly smile, the waiter began to speak. These dishes are courtesy of the Orchid Division. Miss, our division is dedicated to research, food management, and, of course, innovation so that you can enjoy a delicious meal without resorting to savage practices like the other districts are accustomed to committing. These dishes were similar to others known as beef tartar, salmon sashimi, beef carpaccio, and fish tiradito. This restaurant aimed to mimic human food, genetically altering some seasonings that could be ingested by humans once a month without any problem. The waiter continued to explain in detail the preparation of each dish. He assured them that the raw meat in its entirety could be consumed without any problem and that each bite would be a delicious and safe experience. Tuka looked excitedly at Kenzo, her eyes shining with anticipation. Kenzo returned a warm smile and encouraged her to start tasting the food. With a mix of excitement and curiosity, Tuka took her fork and cut a small piece of raw meat. She brought it to her lips and took the first bite. As she savored the exquisite flavor in her mouth, her face lit up with a mix of surprise and delight. It was the first time she had tried something different from the food she had been eating since she was a child. The sensation of something new and exciting flooded her palate, and her gaze met Kenzo's, sharing a unique moment she had never thought possible. This is incredible, it tastes different, and I can eat it. Kenzo looked at Tuka's smile and genuinely felt happy to have invested so much money, time, and effort in these small achievements. Chapter 50, When did all this begin? When did he start feeling all of this differently? He wasn't someone who sought romance in every possible moment, nor had it even crossed his mind to have someone by his side before fulfilling his main objectives in this life. He wanted, at the very least, to feel secure enough to relax, close his eyes, and sleep deeply. His mostly cold demeanor was something that distanced most people, but there was one person who stayed by his side regardless of his behavior. That girl, who behaved fiercely in normal moments and affectionate in close situations, showed a concern for him that Kenzo never expected from anyone. Kenzo had discovered the ghoul world at a late age, with no mentor and no one by his side to tell him he wasn't a monster. He never had anyone who cared for him apart from his adoptive father, who died shortly afterward, so he had to be cold and smart at an early age to survive in a world he believed he could never escape, even if he could camouflage himself in society. He never wanted that. It wasn't suitable for him to pretend to be human when humans remained foolish, arrogant, hypocritical, and above all, reckless even with their fellow beings. They criticized ghouls but ignored bullying, they didn't want to be eaten, but they adored meat. How dare they show concern for an issue when they are indifferent to the problem? They never treated ghouls as humans with problems. Humans never cared about the true origin of the problem and treated all flesh-eaters as simple dogs to be exterminated. Kenzo saw all of this in a completely different way, so he decided to punish both humans and ghouls who didn't know how to behave. He saw business and work where others were simply seeking their own purpose in life. In his early life, he liked to have fun and loved money, above all, he liked to earn it through his skills. But now, that fun was leading him to a challenge that everyone believed was impossible, something that simply wasn't in their levels of understanding, shaking the world completely and making them doubt what they had been doing until now. While Kenzo watched Tuka carefully enjoying her meal, he drank the rest of his wine and said, "If I fight for something, it's only for our future. Now, you'll be a part of it, so I must protect what my father couldn't." "So, what will you do?" Tuka understood a bit of Kenzo's situation. "My father was a strong ghoul, he fell in love with my mother, and after that, he was hunted due to certain problems. What relates my parents' situation to mine is that I don't want to feel vulnerable. I don't like living with the constant fear that someone I love will be hurt." Kenzo lit a cigarette and said, "They consider us enemies, Tuka, all humans do when they themselves are more swine than the most twisted ghouls you can imagine. That's precisely why we must ignore them. You know that staying as we always have is much safer than exposing yourself to danger." Tuka extended her hand. She didn't want to impose her own principles on Kenzo and what she believed was safe, she just tried to make him understand what was best for both of them to stay safe. "How long will that last? If someday we reach a further point in our relationship, what if someday with our friends, children, and loved ones? Humans are advancing their technology, researching ways to exterminate all ghouls, so what we must do is prepare." Kenzo took the wine glass and poured himself a drink, also filling Tuka's glass, who seemed very calm. "So, what do you have in mind? If you agree with Anteiku and live here, your methods will be different, fighting directly with humans. I don't agree with you exposing yourself, but you're smarter than that, so you can share your worldview so I can understand you." Tuka knew Kenzo wasn't a fool, all his moves were meticulously planned, so she wanted to know more. "Uniting all the districts. For my plan to succeed, I need all ghouls in the country to be a single entity. If I achieve that, everything will be much simpler for what will happen next." Kenzo simply said this as if it weren't a big deal. "Do you plan to do it alone? Does the organization you belong to want that same path? How can you be sure that's what they really want?" Tuka questioned Kenzo's words as she sought a clear answer to be sure of allowing him to go down that dangerous path. "Tuka, I am the leader of the Three-Eyed Crow organization. I created that group of ghouls due to my constant concern about being hunted without being able to do anything against humans. When my ghoul cells awakened, I didn't know what to do and when I would stop being able to taste human food as sustenance." Tuka, who appeared to have tranquility in her face, lost color. "The only reason I stayed at Anteiku is not for anything special, just because I wanted to understand why my father didn't seek justice with his own hands." But now, it seems that he understood his position a little. Kenzo was telling the truth, but when he realized how his words could be misinterpreted, he added, "Of course, now I have a great reason to stay in this place." Tuka now understood many things, she didn't want to talk more about it, so she drank. She couldn't stop Kenzo, it would be very selfish of her to do so. For the same reason, she understood what Manager Yoshimura went through and what Kenzo thinks about it, so if she wanted to accept it in her heart, she had to start supporting him from now on. "Just don't die, can you promise me that?" Tuka asked as the alcohol began to take effect on her body. "Of course, how could I die having such a beautiful girlfriend who loves me just as I am?" Kenzo asked as he stood up and added, "Don't you want to go to an incredible place? I want it to be a cool place, with good views, and where we can be alone." Tuka murmured as she took Kenzo's large hand. "Then let's go. Aren't we paying? This place is mine."
Thanks for listening.